I'd like to call the Gaming Task Force meeting to order. First order of business is roll call.
Thank you. For the Select Committee on Gaming, June 9th, Senator Crago.
Here.
Senator McCune.
Here.
Representative Johnson.
Here.
Representative Webb.
Here.
Co-Chairman Lean.
Here.
Co-Chairman Kolb.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we begin, I think there's some housekeeping things to do. And I'd just like to start off with the opening decorums statement. And as we begin this meeting, I call your attention to the committee's rules on decorum. Copies of decorum rules are located with hard copies of the agenda and are available to view on the legislative website in this meeting. We note the rules are simply a reminder of being respectful to each other while we have this process continue. There's more information here. I don't think there's a need to read it, but I think respect each other. We can disagree, but be not disagreeable towards people, and be basically kind and get your opinion out and let the next person have theirs. That would be my ask. And with that, the next order of the housekeeping agenda is interim committee rules. And if someone with the LSO office would like to come up and explain those to the committee, we'll be voting on those rules. This is a little bit different than a standing committee, but I think it's good for similarity between committees so all the attendees understand the rules and what the expectations are during a process of legislative committees, be it a task force or a standing committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. You have a copy of the sample interim committee rules, and what those are is those are adopted by the House and the Senate in the House and the Senate's joint rules. There's a slight difference between the House and the Senate's on the sponsorship of legislation, but that actually won't be an issue for this committee because this committee was created by the Management Council at its April meeting as a select committee under 28.104. And under that statute, the Management Council has authority to create committees, but committees created by Management Council or otherwise don't have the authority to sponsor legislation unless they're specifically statutorily given that authority. And so all legislation created by this committee will need to go before another interim committee for sponsorship. Those rules, other than the sponsorship of legislation, generally provide for the standard order of business, what happens for a motion to reconsider, should this committee need to create a subcommittee of smaller group of members. It provides for rules for the membership. It specifies the duties, the calling of meetings, and that Mason's rules shall apply if nothing else governs. The one distinction I would note is that we do have co-chairman, Madam Chairman Lean and Chairman Kolb, rather than a chairman and a vice chairman.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions about the proposed rules? Seeing none, could I have someone make a motion to approve the presented rules in front of us?
A motion. Second.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor of adopting the interim committee rules, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you for the explanation about our housekeeping rules. And on to the next order of business would be attendees, please sign in if you're here. Next would be chairman opening remarks. Co-chairman Line, would you like to make a comment first? You can. Oh, you don't have any? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the brevity. I'd just like to start off by thanking everybody who's here, who's attending, who's taking an interest in this topic, because it's an important issue for the state of Wyoming in the world of gaming. We've got to address some issues that I think have become more known over the years because the industry's grown so much. It's not like it was back in the day. It's a totally different animal with different needs and I think different needs to evaluate where we're at currently. Number one thing would be for myself, and I think the committee members, is to get information, data on what we're talking about, data on what you know, what you think are issues, say the experts that have been dealing with this for decades in some cases. What you see are shortfalls. That's important. And then to have engagement with the committee when it comes to proposed rule changes, and stating your opinion, which I'm sure there's plenty of, but all this information is going to lead to a better product, is my point. And we are heading into a budget session where we're going to need a 2/3 majority to make introduction, which is a high bar to clear. And I probably don't need to remind everybody, but in the past, we have not been successful legislatively making really any rule changes that helped out the situation in regards to local control. I think local control is very high on the list of things that need to be dealt with first. There are many other issues, fiscal issues, but I think we have to keep our eye on the ball and focus on what's achievable. If we try to get a bill that tries to do too many things, I think it's probably a recipe for failure. I think focus, a topic, in this case, I believe local control is really up there on the list, and work that concept to a point where we have something that we feel as a task force is presentable legislatively, and we'll go through the process to be successful. I think that's really important for me, not to be sidetracked, and to keep your eye on the ball as it may be. And at the end of the day, first, and also limit the amount of bills. I think if we try to do too many things at once, once again, I think it'll lead to failure. Limit the amount of bills, put our time in a couple bills, and just work that product throughout the process. And why? Why is this really important? It's for the state of Wyoming. This is for the benefit of Wyoming. This is for the benefit of our constituents, to answer some questions, because I think they see the gaming industry, frankly, booming. It's HHR. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that the public looks at it, but what counts is their perception. Their perception is there's a lot of machines going in, there's a lot of activity, and our community is changing. And I think they'd like to have answers and reassurances of what is going on with this industry, because it's changing so much, which is a good thing, right? It's growing exponentially. That's not an accurate mathematical term in this case, but it is growing vastly. And what can we do about it? And I think that's the purpose. That's one of the purposes I think this task force needs to focus on. I've spoke to a lot of members of the task force. I'd like to thank everybody who's here, because you are taking time out of your schedules and days in your life during the summer to participate in this. And it's important. We need the House, as we need the Senate, to work a product. And we need to come to an agreement that this is what we think is a good place to be. And we may not always have 100% agreement with that, but we need to have enough agreement that we want to move this forward, and we're going to support it. Because we've got to do that. I think that's going to be a key to success here. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks, and I want to open it up to anybody on the committee if they would like to say something or not. You're not compelled to say anything, but I tried to put that out to the Senate side, at least, that there's going to be an opportunity. If someone wanted to say something, they could. I don't like being caught flat-footed when someone asks me that question when I didn't know it was coming. So I'd just like to give an opportunity for a short set of remarks by any committee member who would like to speak now. No? Okay, well, no takers. Well, thank you for the brevity. Oh, Representative Johnson? Sorry.
I think we're just start with the framework of House Bill 85 from last session. Is that, and then whatever is that our starting point, do you think? I'm just saying.
Yeah, Representative, yeah, that would be. I don't know if we're really at that point of business, but but the answer to your question is, yeah, I think we need to start with a framework of a bill that we already had. If we can use that as the starting point. I don't know where it's going to end, but I think I'm not opposed to starting with a bill that existed that didn't go anywhere, because there was some good things in that bill. I think it was problematic in some other areas, but to answer your question is yes. But when we get to that point, I think at the end of this meeting today, there'll be an opportunity to bring up those type of concepts for bill drafts, Representative, and look forward to hearing from you then. Seeing no other comments, once again, thank you, committee. And next, I guess the next subject is Wyoming gaming. Legislative history. Tamara, could you start us off here and give us some background?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. So within your meeting packet, you've got several pieces from LSO that talk about the history of gaming, and probably in more depth than you'd like to go into here. Just starting with the earliest would be within your new meeting materials. You have from myself an early history of Wyoming gaming, and that was just kind of an interesting piece. Going back through the history from 1869 through 1967, some of the interesting and colorful history of gaming that is not so different from gaming issues that we're dealing with today. When you have time, you can read it for your enjoyment. More recently, within Karen's piece, she discusses, this is the Wyoming gaming history and revenues. Within this piece, Karen discusses the more recent advancement from 1967 to today, when we've adopted parimutuel and live horse racing, and then historic horse racing, more recently skill-based amusement game and online sports wagering. Her piece also talks about the revenues, which I'll let her comment on in just a minute. What you asked me to work on was to pick up a little bit from where the Joint Appropriations Committee left off. And that was last interim, the Joint Appropriations Committee's priority topic number 1 was to conduct a comprehensive review of gaming. And so the JAC did that at multiple meetings, and they created a working group, which also held about 8 or 9 working group meetings, if I remember correctly, to draft a variety of bills. And the bills went through several iterations, and there were a lot of different ideas that came together. What the chairman wanted to focus on this year, at least through this, at this point in time, through this document, was the House Bill 85 and historic horse racing. So historic horse racing is a type of parimutuel wagering. It's under Wyoming statutes. It's called simulcasting. And simulcasting covers both off-track betting, where you're betting on races that are happening live in the state or elsewhere at an off-track betting location, as well as historic horse racing machines or terminals. So when the Wyoming statutes refer to simulcasting, they're covering both off-track betting and historic horse racing terminals, the instant racing terminals. That's one of the challenges with drafting changes to the laws, is to understand that there isn't a lot in statute specifically addressing historic horse racing machines. There's, compared to our newer regulations for skills-based amusement games and online sports wagering, you have a lot more entire chapters that cover all of the permitting process. Well, historic horse racing machines are just kind of smushed in there with the live horse racing. And within their bill, the Joint Appropriations Committee sponsored House Bill 85. It originated as 2 bills. One was to bring in cities. Right now, counties are the only ones that can have authority to approve historic horse racing terminals and simulcasting. The Joint Appropriations Committee brought in a bill to bring in municipalities, and the Wyoming County Commissioners Authority brought a bill to have local control by counties. The Joint Appropriations Committee and the working group asked that those 2 bills be merged, and what you had there was House Bill 85, which would have put in place more control provisions for both cities, towns, and counties, depending on where the historic horse racing, the simulcasting, were to be conducted. It would have allowed counties and cities and towns to revoke authority for historic horse racing terminals and simulcasting and impose some reasonable conditions. It was also loosely modeled on the statutory framework for alcohol beverages for liquor licenses, with requirements for notice, permitting, revocation, and appeal. Then the bills have all had to deal with the issue of existing licenses being out there and granted for 3 years, and the imposition of new regulations. And so in most of the Joint Appropriations Committee bills and most of the bills that were sponsored last year, you saw applicability sections at the end to try to deal with existing permit holders, how to bring them, give them some opportunity to come into compliance with new rules where they already were operating under one set of circumstances under existing statute. In addition to that, the Joint Appropriations Committee sponsored legislation for the breakage on parimutuel wagering. That would have been remitted to the Legislative Stabilization Reserve account. Right now, it's kept by the operator. They sponsored House Bill 139 for the interstate export of Wyoming horse racing, which intended to lay the framework for allowing Wyoming thoroughbred races to comply with federal law to be broadcast out of state and allow other states to have off-track betting locations where individuals could bet on Wyoming races. They also sponsored House Bill 87, the consolidation of gaming, which was a technical bill, at least intended to be strictly technical. Right now, within the Wyoming statutes, Chapter 11, which deals with agriculture, livestock, and other animals, that is where most of the parimutuel wagering and the Gaming Commission lies. Within the newer framework that the legislature has adopted, you're in Title IX. Then there's also criminal provisions within Title VI. Well, this bill would have attempted to consolidate those all into Title IX without changing any policy. So it was a longer bill. I did not include it as an appendix, but it's available online. Finally, the JAC sponsored House Bill 138, which was the Wyoming Gaming Commission itself. It would have taken it down from a 7-member board to a 3-member commission appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the Senate. So the JAC also in the working group had several bill drafts, so they didn't choose to sponsor. And one of them that was of interest was 25 LSO 219. It would have imposed limits on the number of historic horse racing terminals that could be authorized. And there were several different versions trying to figure out what that number should be and how it should be selected, whether it should be population-based or some other formulaic number. That did not make it to sponsorship. Similarly, the legislature also considered transferring the Gaming Commission to the Department of Revenue in its early meeting and decided against that. Then at the appendix, or the latter half of the product I provided, contains all the bill drafts that I could locate that were introduced and numbered, not all were introduced, for the last 15 years. So there have been several different ideas and attempts to change the policy related to gaming, whether it be parimutuel wagering or the historic horse racing machines, sports wagering amendments, and skill-based amusement games. So if you're looking for ideas, you can click through those to see if any capture the policy that you're aiming for.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee? Any questions? Representative Webb, do you have a question? Oh, sorry. At any time, committee, you hear something you wanted to get more explanation on as we're getting these reports, please ask so we don't wait to the end. I always find it harder to wait to the end, to remember what I was trying to think about the last time when I had a question. So ask the questions right away if you don't mind. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 25 LSO 219, which limits the number of historic horse racing machines. What did we use for a gauge or a standard to determine that number? Or did we just play darts? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator McEwen.
Certainly. Senator, let me make sure I'm on the correct version. The working group had several ideas about how to select the right number. And with this version, 0.5, that was the latest, the working group first imposed a minimum of having 25 per location, so as to not have smaller locations, gas stations type of smaller locations with small numbers of machines. And then they set it at 2,000 devices per permit holder in the state. And so to be a permit holder under existing statute, you need to be an approved to conduct live racing. So first, you're approved to conduct live racing, then the requirements are you actually conduct the number of live racing events that happen in the state that are required by the commission, which I believe is currently 14. And then if you met that criteria, you would be allowed to operate 2,000 commercial electric devices in the state. And that, I think, was selected based on the existing number of locations that were being operated. And the working group and Jace, well, the working group who proposed this, the JAC didn't choose to sponsor it, thought that that was appropriate. They also sought to limit to 5 permit holders per state. So right, at least at the time, there were 3 permit holders conducting live races, and they wanted to set that at 5, and then allow each to have 2,000 commercial electronic devices throughout the entire state. There were earlier versions, and I think some other individual drafts that might have addressed a more population basis.
Thank you for that information. Any other questions from the committee? Oh, Co-Chairman Line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for providing all of this for us. My question is, was there a model saturation study done for them to come up with that 2,000 games?
Madam Chairman, no. I think it was just based on the number of existing data showing the existing number of permit holders and where the committee felt they wanted growth to be limited to.
Further questions, committee? No? Seeing none. Thank you for your information, Tamara. And I guess anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, I think Karen is our expert, Ms. Vaughn is our expert on revenues and has prepared work, so if you'd like to hear about those, I can move to her.
Karen, Ms. Vaughn has to be at her ready to man the internet side of the system, so she's doing dual task, multitasking. So Karen, would you please continue on with the revenue side of the discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for letting me sit over here in order to provide my comments today. As Tamara said, the legislature authorized pari-mutuel live racing in '67. However, it didn't see the robust revenues until 2013 when HHR was approved. In addition, local governments only received revenue between 67 and 75. Even with advanced deposit wagering, exotic wagering for those live races, Wyoming didn't run any races at all in 2010. 4 races in 2011, 4 races in 2012. So with HHR coming in 2013, that gave it that shot in the arm that it needed in order to boost the live side of it. And to that point, it has become 99% of the revenues of all pari-mutuel wagering. Pari-mutuel events are subject to a 1.5% tax, whether that is live racing, HHR, As far as contributions to the Breeders' Fund, permittees are required to contribute 0.4%. And then on their exotic wagering, another 1% of those wagers goes to the Breeders' Fund as well. Then you have, of course, source market fees for those events as well. Interestingly, funds in excess of $1.5 million in the Gaming Commission account also transfer. The way the structure is set up for live racing, and you'll have that in an appendix, is that local governments have 1%, and then the balance comes into the state. HHR has, just a minute. I don't want to say something incorrect. Historic racing, 1% goes to cities, towns, and counties. 0.25% goes to the Gaming Commission. 0.25% goes to the LSRA. Historic live events, 1.5% goes into the parimutuel account. Since 2013, you'll see in that spreadsheet where the Gaming Commission, for example, let's just look at 2023. You'll see where revenues to the cities, towns, and counties in 23 were roughly $23 million. And you'll see in the Gaming Commission that year had 4.3. Well, of that 4.3, 2.2 also tipped into the LISRA that year. So since 2013, local governments have received roughly $96 million, and the LISRA has 32 out of parimutuel wagering. For skill-based amusement games, that came through in 2020. So we don't have as long of a history with that. 20% of the net proceeds are transferred, and those are split between local governments and the school foundation program primarily, each receiving 45% of that, and the Gaming Commission receives the balance. In those 4 or 5 years, the school foundation program has received $11.6 million. The last one is online sports wagering. Online sports wagering is taxed at 10% of the net proceeds. That came on in 2021, and we don't have a full year for 21. And with HHR or online sports wagering, and also with skill-based games, that first year is a partial year.
Hold on a second, Karen. We have a question.
Sure.
Senator McEwen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around what makes a skill-based game and what's the skill other than chance on the game.
And I would probably phone a friend who's much more knowledgeable about the backside of the games. I know that I was fortunate enough to go over to the Gaming Commission and see how some of these games work, but I am not confident enough to turn around and explain that to someone else. So for that question, I prefer to phone a friend because it's not so much on the revenue side of it as much as it's the algorithms. I know that in terms of difference in the games, the skill-based games, you could theoretically win on every game, whereas with the HHR, it has a different algorithm based upon the races that are chosen for that and your ability to handicap races.
Senator McEwen, I think we can probably get some of this answered with the Gaming Commission when they come up. Maybe they could help us out and put some more color to that. Karen, if you want to phone a friend and, I guess follow up if you need to, please do. But I think some of these things we can dovetail into the next conversation.
And I think Director Laramendi is probably prepared to discuss that when we move on to the next topic.
I would certainly hope so, because it's their, that's their speciality.
Yes.
But thank you for the question, Senator McEwen. It's a good one. Go on, Karen.
The last is online sports wagering. And you'll see in your materials, the first $300,000 every fiscal year is transferred to the Department of Health for problem gambling, and they use that with grants to the counties in order to address needs. For 2024, for example, the general fund received $1.1 million. It does not have the revenue generation that skill-based gaming does, or HHR. If we were to look at it all in summary, the primary beneficiaries of gaming revenues is local governments. Local governments receive lottery proceeds, skill-based, and HHR revenue. Since 2019, local governments total have received roughly $111.4 million, with the second highest beneficiary being the LISRA, which is at 32.5. By contrast, the general fund has received just under 2.5 million in the last 4 or 5 years. And with that, I would sit for questions.
Thank you, Karen. Question, Co-Chair Line?
Thank you for all the detailed information. Could you go back to parimutuel wagering and give me the totals from 2013 that you cited?
From 2013? Yes, ma'am. The total handle in 2013 was $8.3 million. That year, the Breeders' Award Fund received $46,729. The cities, towns, counties received $4,672. And for operating expenses, the Gaming Commission received $97,406. Now, that was a partial year.
Thank you.
Ms. Vaughn, is that in the packet somewhere, those numbers? I assume that is. Okay.
Yes.
Just make sure everybody has them. All right. Any further questions from the committee? Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Online gaming, is that the only section of our gaming industry that pays to the health department, the 300,000? There isn't something that's paid from parimutuel or the other gaming industries?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. As far as for problem gaming or gambling, yes, the only revenues that are received by the Department of Health come from online sports wagering, that $300,000. The Lottery Commission does have a charge where $200,000 goes into those type of efforts as well, but it is not commingled with the funds with Department of Health. It is separate initiatives, and I believe the Responsible Gaming Coalition will probably speak on what some of those funds are used for later this morning.
Follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Follow-up.
Chairman. We hear a lot about mental health issues, and doesn't matter what subject you're talking about, that always comes up. So I just want to throw that out there, that maybe we need to have other forms of revenue for the health department for, suicide prevention or whatever mental health issues arise. Let's throw that out there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comment, Representative Johnson. Representative Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To build on Representative Johnson's question here, I'm curious to know if there's ever been any studies done on behavioral and social effects on the communities, on the state, on the individuals within our communities and states, and what type of a either positive or negative effect gaming in all aspects might have on them.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. I'm not aware of any studies that have been required by the legislature in that regard.
Well, Representative, I think also we could probably get the Department of Health to testify about what they do with that money and just how they feel like it's being utilized, or in their opinion. So I think we could probably get further information for you. You're welcome. Further questions? Representative, or excuse me, Co-Chair Line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that the money, if it's not used for the 300,000, reverts back. Do you have any history on any funding that has been reverted back to the general fund?
Madam Chairman, I do not. I can certainly check and see if any funds have reverted. But I am not aware of any funds that have reverted in the past, but I can certainly check and get back to you.
Further questions, committee or task force, excuse me? Seeing none, thank you. I'm sure we'll have more questions. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the questions because obviously there's a lot to learn here. And it's very convoluted because there's many different avenues of gaming. And frankly, it's hard to keep track of where you're at for the type of gaming we're talking about. But thank you, Karen, for your work and staff. Well, let's see what time it is. It's 9 o'clock. We're a little bit ahead of schedule here. Let's take a 5-minute break for bathroom and coffee or whatever you wish to do. And so we'll recommence the meeting in 5 minutes, which would be about 9:15. Well, you ran in here. Senator.
Give me just a minute.
Let's call the meeting back into order and back into our normal meeting time. It's a little past. Okay, let me, before we close this, then I'll ask for public comment. We're still waiting for our co-chair. I will put a reminder out to the committee that please speak into your microphone. I think some people are having a hard time hearing us speak, so always speak into the mic so everyone can hear what you're saying online and here for the folks that are present. I think we're going to go to, after this last information on Wyoming gaming, I'm going to ask for public comment. If anyone has any public comment about the testimony you had heard, come on up. And we're going to do that after each one of these topics to ask for public comment. Travis, welcome to the committee, to the task force. Tell us what you think, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. On the spirit of just gaming history, my name is Travis McNev, and I'm here on behalf of the Northern Arapaho Business Council. And so with this first topic that the committee heard of, the various history brief as it was for gaming, wanted to offer to the committee a very brief history as it relates to the tribal side of gaming in the state and where we're at today, we're just bringing up to date. In the early 2000s, the Northern Arapaho tribe approached the state of Wyoming to begin negotiations for a tribal gaming compact under what's called the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. And so again, this was the early 2000s, and under IGRA, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, it allows for any state that has had gaming for a tribal nation within that state to enter into a negotiations to form a gaming compact with the state government. Negotiations between the Northern Arapaho tribe and the state of Wyoming ultimately failed, and the tribe sought remedy at the United States District Court for the District of Wyoming. In February of 2022, the district court found that the state of Wyoming had failed to negotiate with the tribe in good faith. Wyoming then appealed that decision. The state of Wyoming then appealed that decision to the district court for the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, who once again ruled in favor of the tribe at that time. So then in September of 2005, the Secretary of the Interior issued what was called secretarial procedures to the Northern Arapaho tribe to operate their gaming. And so that is why in the state of Wyoming currently, there is not a compact between the state of Wyoming and the Northern Arapaho tribe, as the courts found that the state of Wyoming did not negotiate in good faith. And so the secretarial procedures under IGRA, so Northern Arapaho is regulated, all of their gaming operations are regulated under the Department of the Interior under IGRA, under the National Indian Gaming Act. Shortly thereafter, in 2006, the Eastern Shoshone also went to compact with the state of Wyoming, and the state of Wyoming fairly quickly agreed to a compact with Eastern Shoshone, and those terms are quite similar. Although I'm not super intimate or familiar with those, but they're similar to Northern Arapaho. So that is why we, the Northern Arapaho in particular, under secretarial procedures and are regulated under IGRA in the state of Wyoming instead of a compact, which is quite common in other states. And usually the compacts have some sort of financial sharing mechanism with them. Since the secretarial procedures, the Northern Arapaho tribe has successfully operated multiple casinos within the reservation boundaries and creating hundreds of jobs and generated millions of dollars in economic impact. More recently, over the last number of years, we have seen the expansion of skill games, HHR, sports betting, and the kind of waiting in the wings of iGaming as continued growth and expansion of gaming in the state. It is worth noting that the majority of the operators for these various gaming entities are out-of-state companies with profits leaving the state. Now, why is this so problematic to the state or to the Northern Arapaho tribe? Why is this gaming expansion been so challenging for them? Is a question that we get often asked. The answer is because Northern Arapaho tribe, like all tribes, they lack or have the inability to tax a tax-based property otherwise because of the nature of being a tribal government. And so tribal governments, tribal funds are through tribally owned businesses. That's where revenues come from for any tribal program, social services, infrastructure, tribal government, et cetera, is through tribally owned businesses. So tribes act very much like other businesses here in the state. And so they have truck stops, propane, solid waste, C-stores, home maintenance, these sorts of companies that are tribally owned companies. Of course, the largest of those is the casino operation. And with the expansion of gaming over the last number of years, it is not surprising to just simply state that the revenues coming in for those programs, tribal government, social services, et cetera, have been declining year over year with the expansion of gaming in the state. So this is akin to the state's general fund, if you will, or the availability funds in the state's general fund being reduced year over year for what can be done. The state, the tribe has spoken often about, because of the nature of gaming, the need for strong regulations within the regulatory structure within the state. And the Northern Arapaho views and has stated many times that the growth of gaming in the state is outpast the regulatory framework in the state. And I think will just suffice to say that. And it's for all the reasons above that the tribe certainly will continue to engage with the states and hopes that in particular with this committee, with an actual select committee on gaming, that the committee will see the Northern Arapaho and their 20 years of experience as a trusted partner and source of information for any types of questions, regulatory, gaming, or otherwise that can be of service. And so with that very brief history and a little bit of why gaming is so important to the tribes, their tribal government, their members, and then what happens in the greater state within the state boundaries as they have their members and of course Wyoming citizens at the same time. So with that very brief background, certainly take any questions, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Travis, for your comments. I neglected to say this, let me reiterate to everybody in the audience, we're trying to keep the testimony down to 5 minutes for anyone who wishes to speak. I think if we have time at the end, we could probably have more testimony. I'm always concerned about running out of time, only because in the past history, it's been a problem, and I didn't want it to continue, but it's not it's my issue. I didn't say anything. I just want to try to keep brevity out there and we keep to the point. But your comments are very well needed and respected. I just wanted to point out that we're trying to just stay on schedule with time, and only because I'm deathly afraid of what happened in the past and you get nothing done. And I don't want that to happen. I mean, I've made a commitment to myself to try not to have that happen. But no, nothing against what you've said there, Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate your testimony, appreciate your information. Committee, do you have any questions? Oh, Co-Chairman Line?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard you speak about the impact to the tribes on the expansion of HHR machines. Do you have the fiscal numbers for us, or would you be willing to provide them?
Chairman, Co-Chair Lean, in the spirit of what I just heard from the chairman, I will get some numbers and get back to the committee on that.
Thank you, Travis. Any further questions? Is that good, Co-Chairman? Okay. Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Any other people, anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll close that section and move on to the Wyoming Gaming Commission. Would you like to come on up and, I guess, occupy the seats up here, and we can have a discussion after Tamara? Would you like to start this off?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll quickly kick this off from a legislative perspective and then allow the commission to describe themselves and everything that they do. The Wyoming Gaming Commission is created within Chapter 25, so it's statutorily created. It's, excuse me, I misspoke earlier. It is 9 members with 7 from the appointment districts that are created under Wyoming statute, 1 member of law enforcement, and 1 enrolled member. So it operates like an agency. It has statutory authority to hire a director and the staff that it needs. It is budgeted through the Wyoming legislature's budget bill, just as any other agency would be, with appropriated funds being allocated by the legislature, as well as the number of staff personnel. Now, executive branch agencies have limited rulemaking authority that is granted by the legislature. So it is a bit of a legislative authority that the legislature delegates to executive agencies to describe and further refine and fill in all the details the statutory leaves out. So all rules, their authority comes from whatever is granted by statute through legislature. The rules must meet within the statutory intent, the legislative intent that has been granted to them. They must be constitutional, and they must be within the statutory authority itself. They're signed by the governor, and they're promulgated through the administrative rulemaking process. Rules can be essentially overrode by the legislature in a session through either an order, a legislative order repealing rules, which hasn't happened ever to my, or very, very limited to my knowledge, or through superseding existing rules. The legislature also has an opportunity to participate in the regulatory process during the public comment period and informally. There are 2 members of the legislature that are appointed to serve as liaisons to the commission, and that's one way that the legislature can help provide input about legislative intent and statutory interpretation. There's also 1 member, a liaison from the governor's office. And so those titles, that's 1125, 103, and within 1125, all of the authority for the commission is created by the legislature. And it can change it as it decides to through legislative acts.
Thank you, Tamara. I'd like to recognize Representative Bob Davis, who's one of those representatives from the House, is sitting in the audience, and myself as also the other representative for the Gaming Commission. I have Co-Chairman Line, what was your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My quick question for you is, when the selection process happens for the commission, are any of these men involved as horsemen, stewards, regulators? Do they have direct or indirect payment opportunities based on hobby, profession, or pastime?
No. Tamara?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, thank you. I think I will defer to the Gaming Commission on the latter part of your question. The selection process is gubernatorial appointment. They must be a registered voter of Wyoming, residents for 4 years, and I believe that's about, and then otherwise reside in one of the appointment districts unless they're one of the other 2 members, the law enforcement or the enrolled tribal member. So as to how, I'll allow the second part of your question to be answered by the commission.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I think we can ask the Gaming Commission folks. First up, though, is the Director.
Thank you, Chairman Kolb.
Thank you.
The second part of your question, historically, there was a caveat that they needed some working knowledge of the parimutuel activities. We had horsemen on the board at one time. Currently, we don't have anybody that owns horses or members of the Wyoming Bred Program or anything like that that are current sitting members of the commission.
Further questions, anyone? Anybody? No? Seeing none, Director, would you please continue on?
Thank you, Chairman Kolb. Just to clarify a couple of quick things real quick. A little bit earlier, there was discussion about the 14-day requirement for live racing for simulcasting. It's actually a 16-day requirement. They're required to apply for and actually run 16 live race days in the state of Wyoming each calendar year that they're permitted to offer simulcasting. And then also our commission is a 9-member volunteer board, not a 7-member board. Would you like me to answer the question about the skill games real quick or just move that later?
Well, you can answer it in the order you think is,
Okay.
you have this is your time.
Okay, thank you.
On the agenda, so, Nick, handle it the way you think is going to be best for you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So I know I had presented a presentation to you all that you have. I'll kind of go over it briefly. So within the commission, we have 5 different programs that we oversee. We oversee live racing, parimutuel wagering, online sports wagering, skill-based amusement games, and charitable gaming. Within those programs, our operational structure consists of administration, accounting and audits, a compliance division, a law enforcement division, a licensing division, and the Wyoming Bred program. Skip through our regulatory authority because that was already covered. Also, I included just a simple breakdown of our rules, and I just did this by chapter. I think our total rule book is over 300 pages. But for parimutuel rules, we cover definitions, commission rules, which is just our general rules, appeals, protests, and hearings, information practices, officials, permittees, licensing and licenses, the conduct of races, parimutuel betting, simulcasting, cutter and chariot racing, and professional roping events. For skill-based amusement games, we have our general provisions, the licensing and permits, taxes and payments, game approvals, qualifiers and limitations, skill-based amusement game standards, audit and internal controls, responsible play and advertising, disciplinary actions and hearings. For our online sports wagering, we have general provisions, permits and permittees, taxes and payments, patron wagers, technical standards, sports wagering accounts, audits and internal controls, responsible gaming and advertising, disciplinary and hearings. Also included in your packet, you'll see a map, green and red map, looks similar to this. Under Wyoming law, parimutuel wagering can only be conducted in counties once it's been put to the voters and approved by the voters in that county. Currently, we have 16 counties that parimutuel wagering is legal in. We have 7 counties where it is not legal in. If it's put to the voters and it fails, it cannot be put back to the voters for another 2 years. Currently, right now, the 7 counties that parimutuel wagering is not legal is Park County, Bighorn County, Washakie County, Crook County, Niobrara County, Sublette County, and Lincoln County. I also broke down the permitting processes for both live event applications and simulcasting. It's important to remember that in order to qualify for simulcasting, which is the off-track wagering facilities and the terminals, you must first hold a live event permit. So that's the first step before you can even apply for
We have a
simulcasting.
question.
Yes.
Senator McEwen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just going back to the green and red chart,
Yes, sir.
my curiosity is, of the red counties, did they have votes that were turned down, or?
Chairman Kolb, the most recent one was Park County. Park County put it to the voters, I believe it was 2 years ago now, and it lost. It was a narrow loss, but it lost. That was the last one. I am not sure when Lincoln, Sublette, Crook, if they've ever put it before the voters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Nick. Continue.
Thank you, Chairman Kolb. So the live horse racing permitting process begins with the commission receiving the application. The application, they have to explain the type of events, their management structure, the dates that they are requesting to run the live events, their purse schedule and the types of wagerings they will offer. They have to supply financial statements, and they have to post with the commission a surety bond or certificate of deposit not less than $5,000 in favor to the state of Wyoming. They also have to submit individual license applications and multi-jurisdictional personal history disclosure forms for all of the key personnel. Once we receive the applications, both the event application and the personal applications, our agency begins to do background and feasibility investigations on the company and all the individuals associated with the applicant. Upon completion of the backgrounds, the completed report and findings is submitted and presented to the commission for their consideration and any recommendations that we may have.
Director, we have a question.
Thank you,
Co-Chairman
Mr.
Lyon.
Chairman. I want to take you back to the bonding. As HHR machines have taken hold within our state, has the bonding requirement ever been increased?
Co-Chairman Lee, it has not. And this $5,000 bond, this is for the live event. The simulcasting bond is $100,000, but it has not changed either. There has been discussion that we have had internally and with the commission about increasing that bond to a more feasible level as the HHR market has grown.
Well, Director, do you have rulemaking authority just to change that if you see fit?
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you. Continue. Any other questions?
So after we complete the live event permit.
Excuse
and
me,
it's-
Director. We have another question.
Okay.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The wording on this slide says not less than 5,000. All 5,000? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Cole, Senator McEwen, they are all 5,000, yes.
Continue.
So after they receive their live horse racing permit, that makes them eligible to apply for simulcasting. And simulcasting is for the operation of the OTBs, which is the HHR machines and live simulcasting. These applications are all location specific. So the commission receives an application for each location individually. These also have the management structure, the requested dates, which historically on these, it's usually 364 days a year, closed on Christmas. Financial statements, the number of simulcast performances to be displayed, that is referencing live simulcasting, not just HHR. So how many actual live races they're going to display in their OTBs for live wagering. Any source and amounts of revenues expected other than parimutuel wagering. Their security measures that they are going to employ to protect the facilities and safeguard the transmission of the simulcast signals. They also have to provide the county resolution or letters from the county. I know we have a couple of counties that don't actually do it by resolution. They just do it by a letter of support. I think we have one county that has done that actually. They have to supply that because under state statute, simulcasting can only be conducted off the permitted premises once the Board of County Commissioners approves that. Then they also have to post with the commission a surety bond or CD or letter of credit for $100,000 made in favor to the state of Wyoming. With these, we also do the feasibility. Yes,
We
sir.
have a question, sorry.
Thank you,
Co-Chairman
Mr.
Lyon.
Chairman. Thank you, Director. My question is that $100,000 per company, or is that $100,000 per county for the surety bond?
Chairman Lean, it is $100,000 per company. So the $100,000 bond covers all of their OTB operations across the state.
Well, Director, follow-up question. Has anyone ever defaulted on any of these bonds? Have you ever had a problem with these bonds? So there's no,
Chairman Culp, no, we have not.
okay, thank you. Continue.
After we receive those applications, we conduct feasibility investigations on the location. We review the historical wagering activity for that county, the applicant's history. We also reach out to city and counties officials for public comment. Upon completion of the review of the simulcast application, we will complete the report and the findings and submit that and present it to the commission for their consideration. And I think I will skip ahead because I know we have another section about just specifically the HHR. So the one thing, the relationship between live and historic horse racing. As mentioned earlier, in 2010, we had 0 days of live horse racing. 2011, there was 4 days. 2012, there was 4 days. 2013, there was 10 days. After the legalization of HHR in 2014, we had 20 days. In 2015, we had 31 days. 2016, we had 22 days. 2017, we had 30 days. 2018, there was 34 days. 2019, there was 30 days. 2020, there was 24 days. 2021, there was 50 days. It's important to remember in 2021, we added a third operator. So the prior years, we only had 2 operators that were offering live racing and simulcasting across the state. In 2022, we also had 50 days. 2023, we had 49 days. 2024, we had 54 days. And in 2025, there were 70 days approved. Since that 70-day approval, we've had some work with the newest operator. They've run into some construction issues with power and stuff. So that we're gonna end up running 50 days this year, not the 70, but 70 days were approved. And in 2026, we'll have 70+ days. The Breeders' Award is another big funding out of HHR. In 2013, the Breeders' Award received $46,728.65. I won't go through every year, but I will say in 2024, our office dispersed $8,530,333.42 to horsemen across the state for the Wyoming bred program. That, from 2014 to 2024, that shows a 1,573% increase in Breeders' Award funds over the course of that 10 years. In 2024, there were 520 individual races run. 112 of those 520 were Wyoming bred preferred races. By rule, every permittee licensed by the commission shall offer at least one accredited Wyoming bred quarter horse race and one accredited Wyoming bred thoroughbred race each day during its meet. In 2024, there was a total of 4,331 starters. And of those 4,331 starters, 1,933 of them were Wyoming bred horses. So 45% of the starting field were all Wyoming bred horses.
We have a question, Director? Co-Chairman Line?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Director. Would you talk to the committee a little bit about what it means for the Wyoming bred program? What does that look like for our agriculture team, our housing teams, our interstate and intrastate transportation of these horses? Just kind of give us a 30,000-foot view of what that's doing within our local agricultural economies.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So you'll also see in our annual report under the Wyoming bred, let me get to it so I can quote the right numbers. So in order to be eligible for the Wyoming bred program, the horses have to stand in the state of Wyoming. They have to stand here the entire time. A lot of our horse owners for the Wyoming bred program actually live out of state, whether it be Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Montana. So when they have horses within the program, they have to pay Wyoming residents to board these horses, to feed these horses. There's a lot, in way of Wyoming vets, Wyoming feed. So as it stands in 2024, out of the Breeders' Award, 82 of them were Wyoming residents. The remaining, there's 106 of them out of Utah, 35 out of Idaho, and 10 out of Montana. So there's 151 participants just in the 3 surrounding states that are paying Wyoming landowners for boarding, for pasture, and everything else. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Director, I had a follow-up question to that. At any time during these comments about the amount of fees that we're talking about that we're putting towards like the Wyoming bred, I think it would be beneficial to hear your opinion. Do you think those fees are adequate, or do you think they're not adequate? A comment about just where that fee structure is and where you think it ought to be, or maybe it's in a good spot, but I think your information is going to be important on what on your opinion. So feel free to give your opinion on those numbers. Like, are we doing enough? Are we in a good spot, or over or under where we need to be? Or is it always better to go forward and offer more money? That kind of an idea, but some sort of color to the comments about where we're at. Is it just money? I mean, it's gone up a lot. What does that mean? If you could, put your opinion there. I certainly would like to hear. I think the committee needs to know what you know on your opinion on this situation with fees. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Chairman Kolb. So with the Breeders' Award Program, they get 0.4% of HHR revenues, so total handle. The one thing that's important to remember with total handle, we talk about total handle a lot, and in your packet, I had broke down kind of what these things mean. There's always been a lot of confusion with handle as cash in. Handle is not cash in. Handle is the total amount wagered. So if a player goes to an HHR terminal and puts $1 in, and they press the spin button one time and they win $5, and then play that $5, their handle is $6. They only put $1 in, but the handle is $6. So on HHR, that is what they're taxed on, is total play amount. So free spins, all of the winnings that the player has won that bet back into it, that's what they're paying the taxes on, and that is what the Breeders' Award fees come out of. So they get 0.4% of that. I think as it stands right now, that 0.4% is, it's realized ginormous amounts of revenue. As it stands right now, we have one of the best Breeders' Award programs in the nation per capita. I don't see any reason to get better than better.
We have a question. Senator Hewen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I put $1 in and I win 5, but I don't put the 5 back in the machine. Is the 5 taxed also? It has to go back into the machine?
Yeah, Chairman Kolb, Senator McEwen, that would be right. So if you put $1 in, won 5 and cashed out the 5 and walked away, your handle would be $1. You played $1. So they would just pay the taxes on the $1.
Follow up?
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, if I can push the button. It would seem to me that the 5 should be taxed also. And I don't know if it's possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. And then we have a more color. Cactus, could you shed some light on that?
Yes, I'd be happy. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, Senator McEwen. Essentially, that money already has been, because in a parimutuel structure, that money that's paid back is coming from other play that's already happened. So this is based upon a parimutuel structure. These are not slot machines. So there's 90-some% payback of every dollar spent. And that payback's coming out of dollars that were already spent. So that money has already been taxed.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. Continue on, Director.
Thank you, Chairman Kolb. Also in your packet, I included a slide that just shows the HHR impacts over the last 10 years. Like I said earlier, the Breeders' Award realized a 1,573% increase in the last 10 years. The live racing purse money, this has realized a 347% increase over the last 10 years. In 2014, the average amount of purse money per race meet was $419,000. Last year, the average amount per race meet was 1.8 million. And this year is actually going to be about 2.4 million for 2025. The live race days have realized 170% increase.
Director, we have another question. Co-Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, I'm looking at the operators versus the purse payout. With the anticipation of adding a 4th operator, do we anticipate the payout to remain the same or increase?
On purse money? Thank you, Chairman Lane. So the first year, I'm going to say that the average purse money will actually decrease the first year. The first year of operation for the new operator, when they don't have the support of established OTBs to help fund those purses, that money comes directly out of their pocket. So it's going to make that overall number decrease.
Thank you, Director. One other point of information for the committee. We have the Department of Health online, so in the future, when we're going to talk about the gaming aspect of the addiction and what they're doing to deal with that. We're going to be talking about that later on during responsible gaming comments. So just be prepared and have your questions. Wanted to share that. Thank you, Director. Could you continue?
Chairman Kolb, and the last thing on this side is, slide there is the city and county distributions. In 2014, cities and counties received $1.1 million. In 2024, our office dispersed $21.1 million to cities and counties, which is a 1,764% increase. Over the last 10 years, cities and counties have received $91 million, and the total state revenues over the last 10 years are $83.7 million. One thing that's important to remember too with the simulcasting operations is under Wyoming Gaming Commission rule, the operator with the 16-day requirement to run, if an operator fails to run the 16 required race dates, they lose their simulcasting ability for the remainder of that calendar year and all of the next calendar year. There's caveats to that. You know, if they bring forth a reasonable reason for them not, or failing to run those 16 days, i.e. weather, that's usually the most common one, that the commission has the authority to grant that deviance from the 16 days, and they don't lose that. But if an operator just fails to run their 16 days because they just choose not to, they lose their simulcasting abilities. And it's not a may in our rule book, it's actually a shall. They shall lose their simulcasting abilities for the remainder of that year and the next year.
Director, I have a question. How many times does that happen where there's, say, a weather issue with having those days complied with? I mean, what's the history on that? Have you had any issue with it?
Chairman Kolb, we have. Really, realistically, it seems like every year we have at least 1 or 2 days that ends up getting affected by weather. You know, our race season is pretty limited as far as weather goes, and we've started running now in the 1st of May, and we run through the end of September. Usually the 1st of May, we get spring weather and we get some rain. So far this year, we haven't had to cancel any race dates. We've had a couple of actual races at the end of a card had to be canceled because of a downpour up in Gillette. So out of a 10-race field, they ended up running 8 of the 10 races, and the last 2 they didn't run for safety reasons. The track just got too wet.
Director, is there any makeup days? Would they, say if they lose a day or two, can they add a day or two to the schedule, or is that fixed and it can't be changed because of the race schedule they set up at the beginning of the year?
Chairman Kolb, they could add days. They could come back to the commission and add those. Last year, what we had seen was when they missed a day, they ended up adding the entire card that day to the next day. So instead of running 10 races the following day, they actually ran 20 races that entire day. So they filled all of their cards.
Thank you, Director. Oh, I have a question. Co-Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is about track safety and if we've had to shut down for that. If we have had to shut down for it, has there been compliance exemptions made for the track safety?
Chairman Lane, so when they shut down for weather, that's the main concern is safety issues. And that is taken into account by the commission when they choose to grant that deviation from the 16 days. The safety is the most important thing to the commission and all of our horsemen. For example, the last weekend that we had the 2 race cards that were canceled, that was after discussion with our safety officer. The commission has a safety officer that's employed by them that's on the grounds the entire race meet. He's there 5 days. They have 2 dark days, and the other 5 days he is there from sun up to sundown whenever that track is open and horses are on it. He's constantly checking the track. He's checking moisture content of the track and everything else to ensure that that is maintained at a good, safe level. And then if it starts to deviate from that, he'll get with our stewards. And then the stewards and the safety officer and the management of the operations will meet and discuss the best course of action to make sure that everybody's safe.
Question. Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question on the total distribution, cities and counties, 2024 is $21+ million. That's 1%. Where does the other 99% go? Thank you.
Chairman Kolb, Representative Johnson, So HHR is taxed at 1.9% of total handle. 1% goes to the cities and counties, and that's split 50-50. Each of them gets a half of that 1% unless the location is strictly within the county. If it's a county-only facility, the county gets 100% of that revenue. The other 0.4% goes to the Breeders' Award, 0.25% goes to the state, which is our office, for operational expenses, and the other 0.25 goes to the LSRA. With the state's contribution for our office as a self-funded agency, that's what we operate our entire everything with, all of our employees, our fleets, everything else. And then we also have the rollover every quarter, anything in excess of $1.5 million in our operational account gets rolled over to the LISRA. The last quarterly transfer we did was in, I haven't seen the most recent one, but the last one I had seen was in December of this last year, and it was $850,000 is what we transferred over in addition to the LISRA as well.
Another question, Co-Chairman? Oh, did you have a follow-up?
So we're talking about $21 billion. Is that correct? So with your 2% here and the amount that you get for funding your office, and I don't think that's even 20% of the total take. Is that, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but
Can I take
it
that
seems
one?
like there's a, thank you.
If I may, I'll answer that, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair. Representative Johnson, the rest of it is paid back to the participants in the games. In other words, 90-some% of every dollar is paid back. And the rest of this is the tax that comes out of it. So out of that $2.1 billion, 1.8 approximately is paid back to the players.
Follow-up?
That's the parimutuel structure itself.
The parimutuel structure.
Yes, sir.
So what percentage is paid back to the, that is fixed at a race? And how much is going to be paid back for?
That's,
And then what do the tracks get for their overhead and stuff? That's basically what I'm.
I assumed you were, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, and Co-Chair, Representative Johnson, I assumed you were talking the HHR money, which is the most of it, 2.1. That is also based on a parimutuel setup. So 90% of that money that goes into the machine is actually paid back to the players. And then the percentages that the House keeps, that comes back to the local governments and so forth, comes out of the other 8 to 9%.
Yeah, thank you, Cactus. Representative Johnson, you ask a great question, because there's another part of this that we have not yet discussed, and it is, in fact, what they were talking about, the payback, right? So it's really, in my mind, kind of different than other statutes, the way it's written. We'll have a discussion about that, Representative, but it's a great point on how the money's derived from what. Yeah, there's a lot to that question, and that's obviously a great thing we have to discuss for everyone's edification, so we can get to the crux of this, really what you're asking for. But thank you for that question. It's appreciated. Go on, Director.
Senator Kolb, just to follow up with that, if I may. So with parimutuel wagering, the operators take their cut from the top. They call it a commission rate. On the HHR side of it, the standard or the average commission rate is 8%. So for every dollar that's put into the machine, they get 8 cents. They get it right off the top. That's how they pay their taxes, the Breeders' Award, all of their real estate taxes, employees, everything else. At the live events, the average commission rate there is about 15%. So they get 15 cents on every dollar. In regards to like the $2.1 billion in HHR handle last year, so out of the $2.1 billion in handle, the total payout to the public was $1.9 billion. So the vast majority of it went back to the public. And then the actual commission rate of that was $190 million. So out of that 190 million between the three operators, that's how they pay all of their taxes, the breeder's award, real estate, employees, any sort of leases that they have for machines. And that's also a large part of that is how they also pay for their live event.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I think I'll hand it off now to either President Cavello or Vice President Ritholer for their comments. And then I can go into some further detail on the next topic.
Okay, thank you, Director. Any more comments for the Director? I have one. Just as it comes down to the financial side of this and the auditing or not auditing of said gaming companies, do you require an audit, say an IRS data, their paperwork, basically their tax return that you check with when it comes to the profit? There's a big question here, Director, about just what's going on with profit and loss with these businesses, right? Because that's what you're hearing is how much money are they making? Is it, I mean, what is happening with this? I mean, frankly, is Wyoming getting their fair share of this? But I wonder how we derive the data that double checks what you're getting. Like, what are these companies making, frankly? And do you require any sort of IRS paperwork that backs up their said claims or what you believe, or maybe you don't even, I'm asking an open-ended question. I realize that's kind of a dumb thing to do in politics without knowing the answer. So I'm just going to put it out there. How do you know what you're receiving is true, and how do we gauging what these companies are doing? In the question of fairness, really, in my mind, what's fair, right? So can you explain what you do, if anything, I don't know, to verify the revenue said companies are deriving from gaming activities?
Sure, Chairman Kolb. So it's twofold. So one, they do have to provide our office with financial statements whenever they're renewing licenses or applying for new locations, whether that be profit loss statements or other, well, really anything that our internal auditor requests, they will comply with. As far as the HHR, these are all done through a tote system. All of these machines are connected to a totalizer, is what it's called, and that totalizer keeps track of every wager that's made. So it knows every dollar that's going in, every win, all the cash that is going out. And every week when they submit those reports come directly from the tote companies to not only our office, but we also have a third-party auditor, which is the TRPB, or the Thoroughbred Racing Protection Bureau. Both agencies get those, and they audit those numbers against the reports that the tote companies have to ensure the accuracy of those reports. So the state ensures that the amounts that they are getting paid equal the percentages as far as the handle goes.
Well, Director, I think it's clear that the HHR machines are locked down pretty tight. I mean, you've got a pretty good process to make sure everything's correct. I had a broader question, though, about the revenue of said companies. I mean, I get what you're saying. There's a lot of things that happen with HHR. I mean, I'm not oblivious to the fact that you go to these businesses and they're selling alcohol or whatever else they're selling. There's a lot of things they bring in for business. That's part of their business plan. And I'm not taking anything away from that. I'm just asking the question as a broad sense that, do we really know? I mean, you say they supply profit and loss P&L statements, and you look at those. Do you evaluate them for what you need to know because you can put a lot of things in a loss, right? If you can write it off, obviously you do. So I mean, that's the name of the game in business. But I mean, do you look at those things carefully? Because the question that's going to come up is it fair? In other words, the amount of profit that they're pulling, is it fair to the state of Wyoming? Are we, for lack of a better word, taxing them appropriately so we don't put them out of business, but we are fair to the state of Wyoming? And that's kind of the broader question I think you're hearing here. And when it comes to the payback, I understand it's statutory, and it's saying it's 91.7 minimum. I just heard about this lately, that's why I remember it. And so they're paying back more. And that's the question that Representative Johnson was getting to, is like, well, okay, where's this money coming from and why is it this much? Well, then you hear, well, we've decided that it's in our best interest to have a bigger payback for the customers because it keeps them coming back. I mean, I get that, it's part of the business plan. However, if I didn't have any liability and it decreased the taxes, why wouldn't I pay back more? And they do pay back more. They pay, I think it's 90, they pay back 7%, so that's 93% payback instead of 91 and change. Well, why do we want that? I mean, I realize it's statute, right? But that's something that's in our world that we can talk about, and maybe we want to change that. I hadn't heard of the floor being like this before, like in a statute where it's a minimum payback of X at a floor. Well, you can go more, and they have gone more. Well, but that affects the revenue that Representative Johnson was talking about, doesn't it? Because if they're paying a tax on that handle, on the difference between the payback in that percentage, say it's 7% or it's 8 point whatever, 3%, does that have any effect then on said revenue to the state of Wyoming? Or if it doesn't, tell me how it's derived then. I mean, I need to know, I mean, the committee needs to know exactly on how that money is being evaluated, taxed in this case, because it isn't 100%, right?
It's taxed off, if I may,
If you-
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair.
Hold on a second. So that's the question. So Cactus, if you want to answer that,
Yes,
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair. The tax is off of the 100%. In other words, not off the 9%, 90%, or whatever, it's off the 100%. The total amount that's played is what's taxed. So out of every dollar, 1% of that goes to city and county, and all of that is taken out of the initial part. So if they're paying back more, that does not affect the amount of revenue that comes back to the state of Wyoming, or to the cities and counties, or to the Breeders' Fund, or anything like that. They're just enticing the people to come back and play with money out of their own pocket. It's not coming out of the state of Wyoming.
So then it goes next to Senator McEwen's question on the second poll. Say you won $5, right? That's the part that is affected by this. So that doesn't get, that part of the handle, right, is separate. So it's only the initial bet.
No.
The initial
If-
bet
if-
gets taxed. I'll just use that word loosely. On the initial bet, that's where all the money's derived from. And the second poll, it's not.
No, Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, the second poll is taxed the same way. If you pull it, if you take the money out, it's yours to play. But if you win that $5, that's starting over. If you pull the handle again, another 1% of that goes to the state on down the line.
Also, it's only the winnings then, that if you had won, right? If you won, say you won $20 and you took your $20, that's when it's out of the loop.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have Senator Craigo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just quick question, how does our breakdown of distribution of the total handle compare to other states? I mean, do you have a breakdown of that? Is that somewhere in the materials that I missed, or is that something you could maybe do a spreadsheet for us, just so we see how we compare to everybody else? I think that'd be super helpful, education-wise.
Chairman Kolb, Senator Craigo, I do not have that in here. I will get that to you within the next 24 hours.
Question, Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Chairman. I've got here the audit of Wyoming Gaming Commission for 2025, and it says the results are potentially concerning issues with gaming tax revenue in the commissioner's financial records. Most notably, self-reported revenues lack reliable verification, and some revenue transactions were inadequately supported. I mean, explain this to me. I think that, it sounds like everybody's just on the honor system and Maybe that's
Chairman
not
Cole,
so.
Representative Johnson. So that's specific to our online sports wagering and skill-based amusement games. When skill-based amusement games came online, that is how they report their taxes. It's an honor system. They go in, they have, their databases that they pull weekly to show how much money was in, how much they paid out, and then they report their net proceeds to our office. When those came online and after the commission promulgated rules, one of the rules that we had promulgated was that the commission may procure a central monitoring system, a CMS system, that all of those terminals will connect to, so the commission and the state can see real-time reporting of that. That is something that we are working on. We had put that out for RFP, I want to say about maybe a year ago, and the results of that RFP were $2+ million. It was extremely cost prohibitive. We are reworking that RFP right now, and I'll be submitting that back out to try to see if we can't procure some other type of system. But in the meantime, what we do, we do have an auditor in our office, and we've got our compliance people. So they will submit their reports to our office, and then our auditor and our compliance folks can go out into the field, and they can key these machines with the vendor and have them pull the report, and they can compare the report that they submitted to our office and the meters on the machine itself to ensure that the honor system is actually being done honorably.
Hello?
Have you had any catches? They're risking everything if they do, right?
Chairman Cole, Representative Johnson, that's correct. We haven't had any catches because you're absolutely right. They risk it all. If they were caught doing something like that, their license could be revoked and they would be kicked out, and I don't think it's worth it.
You're welcome. I did have a question. Okay. Just one question about the compliance for this audit and the cost of said compliance, right, to the operators. Is there something that prohibits you from just charging them the cost of coming into compliance? Why is the state doing it? Why don't you put that burden upon the people who are doing these activities? That's the broad question, is why are you expending money to audit an activity that someone else has a viable business in conducting? What's the logic there? What's the thought that had happened? Just the first question. There's a follow-up question from co-chair.
Chairman Cole, the main reason is, especially on the skill-based amusement side, the statute is very specific on what we can and cannot charge. It gives us the fee structure for the licenses, and it gives us the tax structure. It doesn't give us any other ways that we can charge any sort of service fees or any other types of fees for a system like this.
Thank you, Director. So you lack the rulemaking authority to do that. Thank you. And co-chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director, for all you're doing. My question comes from Representative Johnson. I'm moving you ahead. If there was somebody that was not in compliance and they do shut down, what does the timeline look like? Do you have them shut down that day, 2 days later, a week later? What does that timeframe look like?
Chairman Lean, when we find violations, those are remedied immediately. A lot of times with some of the violations that we have, not only are they a violation of administrative rule, especially on the skill game side, they end up becoming a misdemeanor crime. For example, under state law, they're required to have decals on them to represent or to notify the consumer of the vendor. And they also have to have a bucking horse that shows which calendar year they're permitted through, similar to like the weights and measure ones you see on the gas pumps. If those machines are being operated without those terminals, it's a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor citation, and it's a violation of administrative rules. So when our folks are out in the field, they will immediately work with the vendor and the operators to get those games out of service until they're brought into compliance. With something, hopefully it never happens, but if we were to find something as far as like tax reporting goes, that would be an immediate, a summary suspension, and we would begin to work with the AG's office to bring that before the commission for disciplinary action.
Thank you, Director. Anything further for the Director? Any questions? And we'll, hearing none. Oh, Senator McEwen.
Mr. Chairman, this might be a good time to talk about skill-based games and what makes them skill-based and not chances. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you for that comment. I'm sure we're going to hear from the commission, and they could, if, Director, if you want to make a comment, and I'm sure the commission could make a comment about that also, I'd like to hear about it, because that, it is a big question, certainly with the public, is, you know, frankly, a lot of those folks think they're slot machines. And so that's a huge perceptual issue. And I, you know, like, call it what you want, but that's what the public thinks. So I'd like to hear your point of view on that, what makes it, to answer Senator McEwen's question. Thank you, Director.
Chairman Kolb, Senator McEwen, the skill-based amusement games require the player to interact with the terminal in some fashion. So a lot of the games that we have in the field today that have been approved, a lot of it's pattern recognition, similar to like a tic-tac-toe board. So a puzzle presents itself on the screen and you have to either move one of the reels up or down to make a tic-tac-toe, or you can pick a wild to make a tic-tac-toe. If the game presents a non-winning puzzle, there's a secondary game that's included in those. The easiest way to put that is like Simon Says? Not Simon Says. No. What is that one called? Follow Me, Simon? I don't remember. Follow Me something, to where it's a series of lights and they light up and then you follow the pattern. And if you follow the pattern correctly all the way through, depending on which machine you're playing, they'll pay anywhere between 105% and 108% of the wager. So if it's $1 wager and you complete the pattern recognition completely, you'll win between 5 and 8 cents for that.
Follow up?
Answered my question.
All right. Thank you, Senator McEwen. Thank you for the answer to that. Commission, do you have any color to add to that?
Thank you,
Ruben?
Mr. Chairman and Madam Chairman. Was one of my questions when I first got on, what is the difference? And of course, we test every machine. This Gaming Commission has the staff that tests every machine. And there is machines that do not qualify to have the button, but you can sit there and run it like a slot machine. And, but it is a type of deal that there is a little in the computer system. It makes you make a decision before you can make the wrong decision every time and lose. I was going to give you an example. We had a machine in Moorcroft at Deer Haven. One of our neighbor boys figured out how to do it and won every time. They took the machine out because he had to tell everybody. I told him, keep your mouth shut.
Too much skill, huh?
Well, no, you wouldn't expect that out of this kid at all. But everybody's got their bright spot, and he figured it out. And of course, he told everybody, and it wasn't very long. I can't even tell you what the company is in Moorcroft there. But anyway, they took the machine out. It took his play toy away. So that was, and then I was going to make a remark about the handle. When you say, well, you win, you put $5 in and win 20. Well, that 20 was accounted for because somebody else put the 20 in. So it was accounted for. And if everybody would put 5 in and win 20 and take it and go home, we wouldn't have to have money for gambling problems. Once you won the 20, boy, there's 40 left in there. So, but it is based on what runs through the machine. You pull it out, patron pulls it out, it is off the books then, until he goes to another machine and puts it back in. So it is just what's in there, not what's paid out. It's everything that's been put through that machine. And everything that Nick's people do, the payout can't be less than, what is it, 12% is the less?
Per statute, the
Yeah.
maximum takeout rate is 35%.
Okay, no cross-talking, guys.
Yeah. So that they have to make those kind of numbers.
Speak everything towards the chair so we don't get into us talking to each other next time.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. It's just, you know, try to keep things orderly. Co-chair, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along the lines of skills-based gaming, it's my understanding on the HHR machines that you can open it up and see where you're going to position the horses, and it's all blind. But say you're going to put horse 10 above horse 1, is that not also a skills-based game?
Chairman Lean, so with HHR, the legality of HHR is they have to afford the player the opportunity to exercise skill. So with an HHR machine, any one of them, if you go in and you look at the help screen, you will see stats just like you're at a racetrack, whether it be earnings or speed or trainer, and you can handicap the horses in the order that you want those horses to finish. So if you want the 10 to be in front of the 1, you take the 10 and you move it up to the 1. And you can do that for all of the races in there. And if you were to correctly handicap it all the way through, then you would hit whatever jackpot's on the screen. That is how that works. So they have to be afforded, the player has to be afforded that opportunity. That's one of the big things when our compliance folks are in the field that they're always checking for, is to ensure that that's available. A lot of times what you will see when they go through to check machines, if the touch screen is off, just a little bit, to where if the player tries to touch the help screen and it won't work, our folks will take that game out of service, because that machine is no longer affording the player the opportunity. If they can't calibrate that screen and get it fixed, then it goes out of service until it's fixed.
Any further questions for the director? We're going to move on then to Cactus. You're next on the agenda. Would you present what you'd like for us to know?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, members of the Select Committee, thank you for being here and for caring. I guess 4 years ago, when I got on the committee or was appointed, this was all about horses and horse racing, and obviously in the last 4 years, things have changed drastically. So we have a lot to look at.
1 second. Give your full name and your title.
Pardon me. My name is Paul Covello Jr. I go by Cactus. I am chairman of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. Sorry, Chairman, Madam Co-Chair. So now we're faced with a lot of changes. Some of the things we're obviously looking for is always, what is the legislature, what do you want us to regulate? Obviously, we are here to do your bidding. One of the things that we're looking for is some help with regards to HHR machines. What we hear a lot of, and what a lot of our concern is, local control. And obviously, something that you as a legislature has looked at in the past. We think that's important, that cities and towns have the ability to have some say within their government structure and within the counties. We're also looking for your thoughts on when have we reached saturation as far as the number of machines in play throughout the state, throughout different areas within the state, different counties and stuff like that. We're going by a study that we have saying that we're probably close to reaching saturation, but we're always looking for direction from you. We have certain rulemaking authorities, but obviously we're looking to see what is it the citizens of Wyoming want. So other than that, I don't have a lot other than to be here to try to answer questions, to help you understand what we've been trying to learn and regulate for some time. And with that, I'll pass the baton to Vice President, with your permission.
You have a question? Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Explain to me more local control. That's kind of like mental health. I mean, it's a broad term. What specifically would you do? What do you think needs to be done?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, Representative Johnson, my opinion, this is not the opinion of the commission, my opinion is that the local cities and towns should have some say within their county of whether or not basically the OTBs come to town. I know in Goshen County, when 307 horse racing came into town, they came in and tried to locate within the city of Torrington. The city of Torrington didn't want them. They made it very clear, and I think they put enough obstacles in their way that they located out within the county. And I think the city should have the opportunity to not have to do it via zoning, but be part of the permitting process. If you don't want to have an OTB in your city or town, you ought to have the ability to not. The county may have voted it as being legal, but once again, it's like the state has approved it, but then some counties have approved it. My opinion, not the opinion of the commission, is that the cities and towns should have the ability to make that decision as well.
Cactus, I got a follow-up question. What's your opinion? I realize you're just commenting as you, a person on the, commission, not for the commission. The fee schedule, the fairness, the way the split goes, how we tax the these type of operations. Do you have an opinion about, do you think it's adequate? Do you think it ranges from the breeders' money to everything? I mean, how do you view all this in fairness for the state of Wyoming? Do you feel, and this is just, of course, your opinion, do you feel like we're doing what we should do, or could we do more? Do you feel like we're being fair, or maybe we're not to how we're taxing these certain types of operations? Just what's your thought? I mean, and I guess you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I would appreciate the information from you as somebody who's been involved with this for quite a while. Just how do you look at this?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, members of the committee, I think the state's done pretty well with the structure of things. I think what is happening with the Breeders' Fund is exemplary. I think it is really make live racing take off and has the ability to really make a difference. Not only does it help the people in horse racing, but it helps the people out there who are renting land where these horses are stalled, people that are selling feed and stuff like that. So I think that's very important to the state of Wyoming. As far as the fee structure goes with what's going to the cities and states and so forth, cities and counties, I appreciate that. I'm sure they would all like more. Everybody wants to wet their beak in a deal like this, and I get that. The one thing that I think we're maybe lacking is I'd like to see more money go towards problem gambling and the mental health aspect of that. I think it's a big deal. My daughter works in the mental health field, and I think it's important that we look at that as being part of maybe a problem that we're helping to create. So we need to do something about doing the best we can to alleviate some of the problems that we've helped produce. Thank you.
And thank you. And the other question would be on breakage. What is your opinion about breakage? Because it is a substantial amount of money that other states that I researched a little bit use for, in fact, gambling issues, for abating that behavior, as we put 300,000 towards it. Breakage seems to be quite a bit of money. I guess, what is your thought on that?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, and thanks for that question. Leads right into what I believe, what I was just talking about. I'd like to see the breakage go to mental health and problem addiction gambling. My personal opinion, certainly nothing from the commission.
I appreciate that and respect that. Thank you. Committee, do you have any other, co-chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Chairman. My question is about the commission and their responsibilities. Do you feel that you've been given adequate authority through your rulemaking process and statutorily to be able to conduct all of the oversight that you need to as gaming has been growing?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, yes, I do believe we do. There's been talk about needing maybe some more professional commission members, and obviously if sometime down the road that's where you think you need to go. I think we have a good system of citizens helping overlook the commission. We like that good citizen oversight, and I think we've got that now. A lot of people talk about compensation. We don't do it for the pay. We do it because, like the rest of you, we care about the state of Wyoming. So I think things as they are quite adequate.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, in 1125-102 D, it says that the commission shall promulgate rules conducting and simulcasting are reasonable and necessary to protect the public interest. My question particularly comes about a permitting process that recently happened in Laramie. Were you given, as a commissioner, any type of business model surrounding that permitting process?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, with respect to one particular location you're saying?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay, so with regards to each one of the locations that comes through, as far as the business model itself, I guess we see diagrams of how the business is going to be laid out. We see where the counting rooms are going to be. We see where the closed-circuit TVs are going to be, and so forth. So we see all that. The commission staff looks through all that. Of course, they look through the financials to begin with of all the companies. But yes, we see basically how it's going to be laid out, if it makes sense and so forth. And we do get a chance to review all of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I'm particularly referencing like a target audience. Do you have any information that comes before the commission that says, this is my business model and I'm targeting X audience?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, I would refer to our director with regards to exactly each time how that comes. I know there's a study that they have to provide us, and if I may, he could give you more of the particulars.
Nick?
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, yes, we do. So we get a full operational plan along with rendered drawings. The most recent one that you're referencing, we actually got a third-party feasibility study, which was, I want to say it's like 36 pages, and it's showing the target audience, which would be the northern area of the state to the south of us. And they have that all lined out within their plans.
Follow-up.
Thank you, Director. My concern comes that it was brought to my attention that that particular site is also targeting our UW students. And we know that most students attend the university, they come on scholarship, they come on grants, they come on loans. And my concern is if we're targeting an audience that is trying to educate themselves, is that in the best public interest for the Wyoming people?
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were talking about Laramie County, not the city of Laramie. I was referencing the one. I'd have to look through that plan again and refresh myself. I didn't see anything in that plan of operation that specifically showed that it was targeting the college campus or the students at the college. But I can look through that again and let you know what I find.
Well, Director, maybe another way of looking at this is, have you ever turned down an application for those reasons that you could have for the public health and safety? Has there ever been someone denied under those grounds?
Chairman Cole, not to my knowledge, no.
Thank you, Director. Well, continue with testimony.
Thank you, Mr.
Ruben.
Chairman. Madam Chairman, I'm Ruben Rittaller, Vice Chairman of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. And it's really fun to be the last one, because pretty much everybody hit all your talking points. I would like to address maybe a little bit on Madam Chairman's question about one not in Laramie, in Laramie. And that was one of my questions. When you count the citizens of the city of Laramie, is UW students counted? It's not that big a town if you pull all the kids out. And one party said no, and I checked, they are. They are counted. I think they're counted on your representation, everything else. I do believe it has been counted. So, but no, we have never done that. That was always one of my concerns also. And that would kind of play into the legal age for gambling. So most places have liquor license, so 21 is their, where they have the liquor in there. But that would be something that would be nice to look at, that a legal age to gamble. Is it 18, 19, 20, or 21? So that's something. And when Chairman Cavella made the remarks that we just live inside of the rules, and not the rules live inside of the guidepost that the law puts in. And, I'm kind of that way too, that I think if a municipality came to us, the county okayed it, I wouldn't vote for it myself. There is 7, there's more than myself on there to be voting. But maybe it won't hold up if we retained would not allow or permit for some reason. But I think the cities, municipalities, if not move it out into the county and not have the luxury of being in the cities, if the county just approved it. That's my opinion. I'm not, sure not speaking for the whole gaming commission, but that is something that the way we live inside of that law, and the law says county. And so, and it's kind of like rulemaking. I got on just as it was becoming a gaming commission and moving away from parimutuel commission. And the rules are, well, just for a lack of a better word to use, are mind-numbing. And it's kind of like making laws. If you could look at a law and say, this is what it's going to affect 5 years down the road, this is what it's going to change here, you would have every law perfect. And what happens, you make the rules and, oh my gosh, up jumps the devil. That's the thing we didn't think about.
Sounds like you're in line to be a representative or a senator.
What's that?
You're in line to be a representative or senator and living in regret.
But you know, and then the getting back to, is the taxation right? That sure is not the gaming commission's. That's not a rule, that's a law. No different than any other tax that the state of Wyoming would put on for whatever reason, be it property tax, sales tax, use tax, whatever it is. That sure is that you find people, that's why you took the jobs, so you can take all the heat for everything, so.
I did
we
have
sure
a
don't
question
want-
about the 18-year-old though, and the under 21 gambling. Do you have the breakdown on how many facilities that we have that we allow that activity to happen when they're, in fact, we can't control, like the underage folks that are gaming, or lack of control? I mean, just when we license these, how many institutions don't sell alcohol probably is the better question with the activity of gaming. Do we have a certain percentage of that? Because it does come up, and I agree with the co-chair that really we want to be careful about. We're targeting folks that are university students who obviously are not, typically, I certainly will say I was a starving person going to college. I didn't have extra money to gamble. But I wouldn't want those to be the target audience. I can say that. I don't think that's for the public safety and good of the public health of our community. But, so just the question is, what percentage or numbers do we have, Director?
Chairman Kolb, so on the age requirements for skill-based amusement games by law, it's 21. Those are mandated to only be in liquor licensed establishments or truck stops or smoke shops. Smoke shops by law are also 21. If it's in a bar and grill that has a liquor license, they're required under Gaming Commission rule to have a wall around it with a single point of entrance. It has to be signed off. That's one of the things that our compliance folks are always checking for. They'll even sit back in the back and monitor those locations to make sure underage play is not going on. For parimutuel wagering, legally, it's 18. However, the standard practice for our 3 existing operators is 21. Whether the location serves alcohol or doesn't serve alcohol, they've, from a business decision, they've limited those to 21 locations only. They would rather not have 18 to 21-year-olds in those establishments, even if they don't serve alcohol. That's pretty much the standard practice. They don't want anybody under 21 there.
Thank you.
Online sports wagering is also 18. Standard practice for those is also 21 for the most part.
I love that, for the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah, that's a term of art. The question of truck stops, could you elaborate on the rules? I was a legislator back when that passed, and I was always, I guess, a little bit leery of that. And I guess from what you just said, it makes me ask the question, just what are those requirements in truck stops? Are they exempt from what we just had talked about with, who's monitoring those folks, and how do we know about compliance, Director? Thank you.
Chairman Kolb, they're not exempt from those requirements. They fall under the same requirements as far as the walls and ensuring that no one under the age of 21 enters those. That's where a lot of our focus on our compliance side spends a lot of their skill game time, is on these locations that really aren't age restricted, like a bar, because there's more opportunities for underage players to take part in those. A lot of the truck stops, we've got the big chain truck stops. They've moved these machines into like driver's lounges. The driver's lounges also have closed circuit cameras to where the folks behind the counter can constantly see those and monitor those areas to ensure that underage people aren't going into those.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Has there been anyone, I guess, caught, cited for having underage people play said machines? And if so, what's happened because of that? I mean, what type of penalty do they face if that happens?
Senator Kolb, so we have been working on creating a compliance program strictly for underage compliance checks, similar to what the Wyoming Associations of Sheriffs and Chiefs do for tobacco and alcohol, is working with local agencies to send underage people into these locations for compliance checks to ensure that they're not happening. It's hard when our folks are in there to check them because, of course, when they're in there to check them, nobody's around or they are on their best behavior. So to date, we haven't had any formal complaints to our office about underage people playing.
Well, Director, just one follow-up is, when do you plan on having this program up and running? You said it's not going yet. What's the timeline look like?
As soon as possible, and I'm hoping to have it ready within the next 3 to 6 months.
Thank you, Director. Follow-up, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, my question is, have you had anybody remove the skills games because they've had to be isolated from non-use?
Chairman Kolb, Co-Chairman Lean, I don't believe so. I know in the very beginning when the commission had promulgated the rule for the wall, there was, a little bit of pushback in some of those areas that they didn't really want to have it cordoned off that way. But, everybody has been compliant with that and willing to do that. I can't think of a time where they've actually pulled the games out because of the requirements to have walls.
Further questions from the task force? I guess if you want to continue on, if you had something else to talk about there, Mr. Vice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lost my train of thought. No, I'm just teasing.
Yeah, you really should be a legislator.
No, I want to thank you guys for coming and listening. And when you talk about rulemaking, there is quite a process to rulemaking. It doesn't happen with a vote of the committee, commission. That isn't how the rules are made. They got to go through the public comment, can be in the governor's office for 75 days unless we do emergency rules, which we have done. And then they're quite more expedient, but they're only good for 180 days. I think we can re-up them one more time. So it's like a 360. And I just want to reiterate on the racetracks, our number one issue on taking care of the public, the gambling public, is sure the athletes, the equine and the human athletes involved, and that is number one. And there is no golden bullet or silver bullet that can cure everything, but we do track inspections. That's the biggest thing where we don't have horses breaking down, jockeys getting hurt. It is quite an active sport. So safety, I would have to say, is number one in everybody's heart. And we did do safety emergency rules, and I think you can't completely, there's people out there that do not think we should be racing horses or doing rodeo. And so we got to make sure that we keep very diligent on safety is number one. And I just wanted to add that. That's a big issue. So, and I guess after that, I'd have some questions. If not, thank you.
Well, we have a couple of questions from the co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question comes, I'm looking at your report from 2024 on page 10. At the bottom on skills-based gaming in the center of the page, it says, skills-based amusement games shall not include any game played for prizes of a nominal amount as provided by the rule of the commission. My question is, what is the nominal value that we're using?
I think we're using $50. It's $50. That's the claw games in the cafes and Walmarts, you know, where you put your money in, and I think it's a $50 prize. Those are not regulated. So that's the main game.
Thank you for that follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, did you have
And the
another?
reason that is, that was quite a discussion. How deep do you go? You know, you got to be 21 to play the claw game, so.
Follow-up?
My next one is on the next paragraph in that same page. It says at the very bottom, shall not include or be conducted of any physical location created by sports wagering operator or vendor. Carrying through with the online sports wagering, I want to make sure that I'm reading that correctly, that the commission shall never permit an establishment in physical property where we can have online wagering. Is that correct?
I'll let Hector.
Chairman Cole, Co-Chairman Lean, that is correct. That prohibits any brick and mortar sports books.
I have one more, but let me think about it.
All right, we'll delay that follow-up and ask anyone else on the task force. No, I don't see any. Well, you're up again,
Okay, hold on, I got
co-chair. We'll give you a second to gather your
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've moved to page 14, where it's talking about Calcutta wagering. Just for everyone that's listening, I want to talk about rodeo Calcuttas, particularly one that I attend frequently in Grable, Wyoming. It's called the Days of 49. Can you talk to us a little bit about the committee, about how the commission regulates rodeo Calcuttas or ropings?
Cactus, you can do that.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, I'll be happy to. So you can apply online and get a permit to run a Calcutta. Basically, the requirement is that at least 10% of the Calcutta proceeds will go to a charitable organization of some sort. That's pretty much it. You can apply online and you will receive the license fairly rapidly. I know in my county, when I saw this was happening, I knew of many roping, rodeo, golf Calcuttas going on, and I ran around and asked them all to get licensed, obviously, because I attend a lot of those. I can't participate anymore, but I know people that are there, and I'm like, we need to make sure that you have a license when you're doing that. It's real quick and easy to get. As of now, there's no real requirements for reporting, but I suspect down the line at some point that may be something that we'll look for.
Good. Oh, we have a question, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They have to give 15% of the proceeds to a charity, is that correct? And is that charity named? How, I, Frontier Days Committee member for a long time, and I don't know that I ever knew who they were giving their money to.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, Representative Johnson, it's 10%. Yes, and it's supposed to go to some charitable organization. I'm thinking they're looking for a 501c3 or something of that, you know.
Is that noted on the card or the?
Once again, right, as of, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, as of right now, Representative Johnson, there is no reporting.
Well, just to follow up to that, it seems like we should have it noted down, because you wouldn't want someone to name themselves a charity and pump the 10% towards them, right? So it sounds like I mean, is that within your rulemaking authority to designate that they have to report who the charity is they're donating to?
Chairman Kolb, so part of the application process, they put who is putting it on and then the name of the charitable organization that's sponsoring it. And that's one of the things before we license them, that we're verifying that that charitable organization is in fact a charitable organization who can receive those funds. And then once they receive their application, they're also given the requirements that talks about how they have to post their rules. The 10% has to go within a year and the 90% has to go back to the public, et cetera. We do the same thing for the bingo and pull tabs as well as the Calcuttas. They get a breakdown of what their requirements are.
Thank you for that clarity, Director. The other question I had was the private clubs and just how is that going? I had heard in the last Gaming Commission meeting that it was an issue that you were trying to deal with, and the Supreme Court came across a few, as I understand it, a few decisions on that. Just where are you at on your private clubs, the bars that were saying they were a private club and holding, poker events and such things like that? What's the status of that? Could you give an update to the task force?
Chairman Kolb, that goes back into the Title VI statutes for illegal gambling. I think one of the most important things for that, as we had talked about before, was the definition of a bona fide social relationship. We've investigated numerous illegal operations across the state, and that's kind of the one general discussion with prosecutors is this, what exactly is a bona fide social relationship? And the other one in Title VI is the definition of profit. If you're bored and you want to figure that one out, please let me know if you can figure it out, because we've tried multiple times with a lot of different prosecutors and nobody can really understand what that means. So bona fide social relationship and profit should probably be reviewed and maybe simplified. That would definitely help our law enforcement team be able to prosecute or bring solid cases to prosecutors for these locations to be shut down.
So, Director, I understand it's still an issue. Is that the long and short answer to that question?
Chairman Kolb, it is still an issue, one that we're still trying to work through.
Appreciate your help, and this is where we have to cooperate. I'm not going to say we're going to tackle this right away, but obviously it's a problem that's not going to go away. We have to deal with it and come up with a solution, so appreciate that update. We have a follow-up question, Co-Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For anyone that would like to answer it, I was curious to know about the vets. Can you talk to us a little bit about, is it just the state vet, or do you have multiple vets that come to the races? Are they independent private vets, or is there a hired vet for each race to make sure that the horses are healthy and maintained?
Chairman Kolb, Co-Chairman Lean. So there's multiple vets. The state has a state vet that we employ. He's the one that's responsible for all of the drug testing of the animals that win. The tracks also have their own vet, which is the track vet. Those are usually private practice vets, and they just go around the backside in the barn area, and they work with the horsemen as just a vet, if for Butte, Lasix, things like that.
Follow-up.
Thank you, Director. My next question is about the stewards, and do they also fall under the same category as background checks, viability for maybe some of their experience on where they've been, or are they just off-the-street hires? Can you just talk to me a little bit about how they come about?
Chairman Kolb, Co-Chairman Lean. So those positions are specific to stewards. We only look at stewards that have gone through steward training and are certified stewards. These folks that we currently have years and years of experience. They do go through the same background checks that our full-time employees go through. So they're fingerprinted, criminal history background checks, and they go through the same application process that ours do. But they are specific to stewardship.
Oh, Cactus.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, if I could, a little follow-up on that. That's kind of part of the race officials that are approved, presented by each track in advance, and then all those folks are vetted by the staff and then approved at a meeting, along with all their credentials and so forth.
Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The staff is all that the operators hire are all checked. The stewards are actually Wyoming Gaming Commission employees. They work for we hire them. So, and those guys have the right to, they're pretty much, what do you want to say, head of the show during the race. They can pull a horse, they can do whatever they want. It takes two stewards. One steward just can't be mad. He's got to have somebody go with him, one of the other stewards. But they are pretty much the ringleader at they have all the authority they need. Thank you.
Oh, follow-up question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While we're speaking about background checks and the like, I have a question about those individuals that are overseeing all of these operations. The head companies or the parent companies, do those people as well go through the background checks, or is it just the folks that are working on the ground?
Director.
Chairman Cole, Co-Chairman Lean, they go through the same background checks. Actually, the management groups go through even a more rigorous background check than just their standard mutual employees. Their mutual employees go through, it's a 4-page application and a criminal history check to ensure that they don't have any criminal convictions that would prevent them from getting a license. The management group, like I had outlined earlier, they go through, they do their individual application, and now they're required to do a multi-jurisdictional disclosure form, which is actually something that the Spectrum report recommended to us. It's a 67-page background. It's very, very in-depth.
Oh, follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one last one for you. So I'm curious to know, I'm looking at my map in this handout, and I'm looking at my payouts on my skills-based gaming, and Park County is labeled here as receiving money, but they're in the red here for pari-mutuel wagering. My question is, how do we authorize Park County to receive skills-based gaming but not receive pari-mutuel wagering if it did not go before a vote at the people?
Chairman Cole, Vice Chairman Lean, the skill-based amusement game wasn't a opt-in type statute. When the legislature legalized those, they legalized them across the state. So municipalities and counties don't have a say in those ones. Those are in all 23 counties and I believe 99 municipalities across the state. We have them everywhere.
Thank you.
Director, I do have a question you brought up about convictions and how it disqualifies you from getting a license. Just what things can you do and not be disqualified? I mean, I'll say it that way. There's probably a whole lot of things there's a whole list of them, but what can you do, like say a misdemeanor or a felony? Is there any felonies or misdemeanors you can be convicted of and still get a gaming license? That's the question.
Senator Kolb, that's a interesting question because it depends on the type of license that you're applying for. So under, I believe it's Title 33, we have to weigh the criminal conviction with the type of license that the person is applying for. So if they're applying to be a groom at the racetrack and all they're going to do is feed and water a horse and brush a horse, but they have a felony conviction, we can't really tie a felony conviction for anything to brushing a horse. So that person would ultimately get a license because the two don't coincide. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Potential for doping? I mean, that's really the broader question. You hear about people can't get a license, right, for any conviction. But there's never been a qualifier that I've heard that says just what those convictions are, that's all. And you don't have to answer that question right, but if you could supply that to the task force on just what those criteria are that would disqualify you, that'd be great. I didn't mean to put you on the spot because I realize there's a lot of things on that list. But I think it's good to know because you always talk about it, but you never hear the details.
Chairman Culp, I have that in the office and I can get that to you.
Okay, I appreciate that. If we could forward it from the LSO to everybody on the task force, that'd be great. Any further questions from the committee, task force, excuse me? No, seeing none. Thank you, gentlemen. Stay close. Thank you for coming up. Thank you for your time. I know you're high-paid folks, but we certainly people appreciate what you do. And it's time for public comment. If there's anybody who wants to make a public comment about the said discussion, come on up. Fill up the seats. We'll go in the order of Mr. Picard first because he got sat down first.
I appreciate the distance between the two of us. I'm starting my clock, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Dave Pickard. I'm representing the Sports Betting Alliance today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can on sports wagering. But I think what is important, first off, I'd like to say thanks to the commission for the in-depth discussion, and I think it was a very nice broad overview of gaming in Wyoming. And I appreciate the creation of this task force select committee to dig into this even further. We've lost a lot of the institutional knowledge of a handful of legislators that really delved into the gaming issues over the last decade. And so I'm hoping, although you might not all want to be, I do hope you all become experts on gaming policy in the state of Wyoming. I have provided staff with 2 handouts, and I think those are important for you to understand going forward. I'm not going to go through them in the interest of time. But what I would like to say is I think it's also important for the select committee to understand the illegal gaming that's going on in the state of Wyoming and how to address the illegal gaming. And in particular, I talk about, I mentioned 2 topics. One is the online sports wagering, which the legislature, as you know, in 2021 took a big step forward in trying to eradicate that illegal market by creating a regulated, consumer-protected market with the online sports wagering. The fact of the matter is there's still an enormous amount of illegal gaming going on out there, whether it's sports wagering or the sweepstakes. And I can provide more information at a later meeting on all of that or all of those activities. But the fact of the matter is by creating that legislation in 2021, you gave the tools to the Gaming Commission and the AG's office to go after those illegal operators that are continuing to operate in the state, and appreciate the commission doing that. The other item that I wanted to mention briefly is responsible gaming. You've heard reference to the $300,000. We specifically wrote that into the legislation in a recognition that the activity should be conducted with responsible gaming in mind. Our operators, I represent, the Sports Betting Alliance represents 4 operators. Those operators have a dedicated staff of over 200 strictly about responsible gaming. And in addition to that, every one of the employees of all of those operators are trained in responsible gaming. And with that, what I'd like to offer up at the next, I know the next topic is about responsible gaming and the coalition here in Wyoming, but I would like to offer up for the August meeting or a subsequent meeting, our RG folks to come in and give you a robust understanding and demonstration of all of the aspects of responsible gaming in the online world. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I got 1 minute and 59 seconds left for one question.
Mr. Picard, you can take your time. And then, as I said before, at the end of this task force meeting today, if we time allows, we'll allow additional comment, public comment that time. I just want to make sure we can make it to the meeting. But I appreciate your brevity.
Yeah. And I stand for any questions.
All right, any questions? Yeah. Do you have one? Oh, co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming today. Is this the handout you're referring to? Okay. My question is, can you give me a 30,000-foot view of what illegal gaming and sweepstakes looks like and how that fits into this?
I can. So when you're looking at Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chairman, when you're looking at the marketplace, I think all you have to do is pull out your phone. And I really highly discourage you from Googling iGaming or sports betting on there, because you're going to be inundated, especially if your social media is connected to that search engine, you are going to be inundated with all of the illegal operators out there. There are hundreds upon hundreds of them, and they are primarily overseas, most of them down south in the islands. And that it provides no consumer protection. They don't include know your customer. They don't include geofencing. So in the structure of online sports wagering in Wyoming, we are geofenced out from operating on the reservation. And that's an important thing, not only for the reservation, for their sovereignty issues, but also for competitive issues that they have within their gaming interests. None of these other illegal operators have that. See, there's my five minutes. But none of the other, the illegal operators do not abide by the geofencing, nor do they abide by know your customer. KYC is a very important aspect of online sports wagering and iGaming, in that it's multiple verification factors that go on your phone or on your desktop when you are signing up for an account. And so we know precisely who that customer is. And if you verify their bank accounts, you utilize uploads from their driver's licenses or other types of government-issued identification. That is the primary difference, is the KYC, the geofencing, the responsible gaming aspects, and then in addition to the money that's paid to the state. Online sports wagering is taxed at 10%, and so you're losing all of that revenue that's out there in the illegal market. When we approached sports wagering in 2020 and then subsequently passed in 2021, the American Gaming Association, let me rephrase that. I don't think it was the AGA, but there was a robust study out there that indicated that $447 million annually was being wagered on sports in the state of Wyoming. There's a whole variety. Could be online, could be through bookies, could be through a variety of activities. All of that is going untaxed. And so when you're looking at a regulated, legalized market to address the illegal market, you're putting those safeguards in place, and you're also participating in some of that revenue stream. That's the main difference between them. Age is an issue as well. That's why, our platforms, as the director indicated, the statute is indicated at 18 for online sports wagering. Not all of the operators, but most of the operators go to 21, and primarily because other jurisdictions around the United States are at 21. And it does make some public policy sense. So, hope that answers your questions.
Thank you.
Great.
Any further comment? Seeing none?
All right.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Mosier, Wyoming
Mike, you're
State
up.
Liquor Association. I will not time myself because you have a gavel and you can toss it at me if I go too long. I will use 3 deadly words that you'll hear from lobbyists. I will be brief. First of all, as you know, a lot of the gaming we're talking about are in the establishments I represent, whether it's bingo, pull tabs, poker, skill games, HHR. A lot of them are in the businesses we represent. I was not planning on testifying, but Mr. Chairman, you brought up something that I have a lot of experience in, and that's the legality of poker in bars. What really ignited that was back in '06. Some of you weren't born then. The Attorney General of the state of Wyoming, under Dave Friedenthal, ruled that the way statute read is the business couldn't make a direct profit if poker was being held. Well, the AG ruling was that direct profit included selling the products. So we went from, we always assumed direct profit was you couldn't take a cut from the game. And so we went from don't take a cut to the game to selling them a cup of coffee just became felony gaming. And so we needed to run some legislation. The TRW committee at that time, Representative Childers and Senator Burns, who were the chairman, ran legislation, Senate File 23, which, among other things, because we also did things with bingo, removed, if my memory serves me correctly, removed the word direct. And so that way, grandma and her friends that came in for a cup of coffee and played Texas Hold'em wouldn't end up in prison. And so that legislation passed. The other thing that came up for discussion, and it came up in several bills afterwards, is the term bona fide social relationship. Back then, gaming enforcement was done by the Wyoming Liquor Division. We removed them from statute when the Gaming Commission came into play, which they were very relieved about. Bona fide social relationship was simply determined then by if you don't advertise and they're in your bar, it's a bona fide social relationship. That's kind of what I still go off of. If you start advertising, you're obviously not advertising to your clientele. And so if it needs elaboration or more specific,
determination. That is your call. I think it works pretty well. It's vague, but on the other hand, if you're advertising, it's pretty clear you're not shooting for your clientele. The direct versus indirect, ever since we changed that law in '07, I haven't seen any real problems with that. But I'd be willing to work with the committee on any further definitions. The big thing is we don't want to, like we back in '06, all of a sudden turn social games into a felony. And with that committee, am I under 5, sir?
You are, Mr. Mosher.
With that committee, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Mosher?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you for your public comment. No.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Emeritus Affey.
Private citizen Ellis is fine. My name is Affey Ellis. I work for a law firm called Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck. I'm here today representing Cowboy Racing, but a lot of the conversation you had today had to do with skill-based amusement games, which was something I worked on heavily when I was in the legislature. So I'm really going to offer you some just nuggets of information. I'll try and be brief, but really want to be there to answer some of your questions. First and foremost, this issue of bona fide social relationship has come up. Last year, this was an issue the JAC looked at. If you go back through your JAC meeting materials from last year in December, they had a bill draft that talked about how they could maybe tighten up that language of bona fide social relationship. So I don't want that good work to be lost. Maybe that's a good place to pick up on that issue. I know it's very real in Laramie County about potentially illegal things popping up. So I think my prosecuting office would, I think, appreciate another look at that. The second is just talking about the discussion of background checks. And if you read the gaming study, which I know you're all aware of, the legislature appropriated $200,000 for Spectrum Gaming to come up with a comprehensive study of gaming, and they did. In that report, they talk about how we have background checks, a little more structure to it for online sports wagering and skill-based amusement games. And I want to kind of put this in context for you of why there's a difference. You've heard testimony from LSO that, we had parimutuel wagering and these HHR machines kind of got smushed into those statutes. And that's, I think, a fair assessment. In 2020, we had a number of these, what at the time were called gray or illegal gaming machines, and the Attorney General's office was looking at their legality. But it was around 2020, we had COVID. A lot of bars and restaurants where these were located were shutting down, and we heard from restaurant owners and bar owners saying this is a critical source of revenue to keep us afloat. Please don't turn off these machines. So rather than shut them down and really, try and take some enforcement action, the legislature tried to figure out a way to grandfather them into the state. And that's why you have a Wyoming Gaming Commission, why it transformed from the Parimutuel Commission to the Gaming Commission, so that their view of regulation was broader. And that was also the same year the online sports wagering came in. So when I got into the position of getting to run the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resource Committee, I inherited a bill that was supposed to provide some of that structure for skill-based amusement games. Given my background in working in gaming, I thought it was a little alarming that we didn't have automatic grounds for denial. I've worked in gaming through primarily Native American gaming, but every jurisdiction that I'm aware of says if you have certain things in your criminal background, you don't get a gaming license. Crimes involving theft, like embezzlement, certain felonies. And so as I inherited that bill, quickly started scrambling, trying to find something that would work for Wyoming. The session was coming, I knew committee chairman. And so that what you see in Title 11 when it comes to skill-based amusement games, you're going to see that language that says if you have these certain things on your background, you don't get a play in Wyoming. We also included some duties to report. So if you've gotten in trouble in another gaming jurisdiction, you better let Wyoming know. If you're involved in a lot of litigation, and these aren't automatic disqualifiers, but say you have an establishment where there's a lot of slip and falls outside, it's dangerous, you get sued once, okay, you report that to the Gaming Commission, but say you get sued 10 times for something similar. Well, maybe the Gaming Commission needs to put a pause on your gaming license for you to have your skill-based amusement games based on kind of that volume. So that was the intent behind some of that. So that bill did pass out of the Senate, then from the House came over the online sports wagering, so I added that as an amendment as well, or offered it, and the legislature adopted both. So if you go back to that gaming study I mentioned, they both cite that Wyoming has more formalized structure when it comes to automatic denials for your gaming license in those two particular areas. You heard from Director Laramendi that they require that information to be provided to the commission as well for HHR and parimutuel, and that's true. However, there don't exist those automatic grounds for denial, those duties to continue to report, either in rule. And I think that's problematic. And that's what, if you go back and read the gaming study, that's what they're alluding to, is that there is no statutory framework for that. Why is that important? LSO provided you with a handout, and I think it was the one that provided the recent discussion of bills that have been developed. If you go back to 2024, you'll see House Bill 125, or 206, and Senate File 125. They're called parimutuel wagering activities amendments. Initially, we heard some concerns that because we didn't have these positions codified in our statutes that say, if you're a janitor that maybe has access to the horses, or, someone that has the ability to clean the stalls, what's the appropriate level of background regulation that you should have? I would agree, they probably don't need to go into your deep financial records, but probably some basic level of, have you had any crimes, any assaults? Like, are you involved with criminal elements? I mean, to your point about, we don't want people that might tamper with the horses having access to those horses. But if you're the CEO of these companies, if you look at other jurisdictions, those records that they require are more extensive. So in other jurisdictions, you see a tiered system of, if you don't have a lot of access to horses, if you have access to machines, if you're the CEO, if you're the managers, what level of background check is appropriate and what on there would disqualify you from getting to operate in Wyoming. So the commission, as much as we want to rely on them to do that through rulemaking, really don't have that authority. These bills that came about in 2024 were the result of a concern that was raised by the Federal Bureau of Investigations about our use of their criminal data background systems. And understandably, you don't want people to have just any kind of access to go look at your criminal record without a reason to do it. So usually they require governments to say, if you were going to license a daycare, we want to make sure you don't have, crimes against children on your background. There has to be some kind of connection, and it has to be in through statute. Because we didn't have that for parimutuel racing, those two bills emerged. And so this does require a little bit of thought on your part, because I do think it's time, and I think it's appropriate for Wyoming to start looking and understanding on the parimutuel side, what is your access to maybe affecting a horse race as a janitor of a stall, or an HHR facility as the manager of the casino? What kind of influence do you have over the games? And then if you're the owners of these, look at other jurisdictions. They show you financial records. They want to make sure you have no ties to criminal elements. You heard Mr. Laramendi testify. Years ago, I worked on this issue and was concerned about it, and I asked him, if we had those same automatic grounds for denial that apply for skills and online sports wagering, if those applied to parimutuel, would we have to revoke some licenses? And his answer was yes. I can't remember the exact number and who the people were. I remember hearing something about, maybe it's some of the people that participate in the relay races, then they couldn't play, race. So that, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to offer those remarks you just heard something that we shouldn't be glossing over. It's contained in the gaming report and the gaming study as one of the things that the legislature actually does need to address. And the FBI was very clear, for us to continue to use their systems, it has to be done through statute. At the time, I did visit with the DCI director, and I can't remember, they have always the best nicknames, if Frosty, Woody, all those guys. What's at stake, and we literally could have lost our access to online criminal databases if we didn't act and pass one of those laws. So that's why you see two of them on there. It was very critical for us to get that done. And the notion of us having our highway patrolmen going out there and enforcing laws, checking your driver's license, and not having the ability to look at your background, I thought was pretty worrisome. So I was a co-sponsor of one of those bills. So nothing to do necessarily with parimutuel, but I wanted to offer that perspective to you. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Any questions for Ms. Ellis? Seeing none. And Affy, in all fairness, later on, I went over, but you can stay if you want towards the end. You can add more public comment if you feel like you need to, because your information is good and valuable. But thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to your point about institutional knowledge, as someone who's always thought of herself as a younger person, and to look at all of you and say, oh my God, I was elected before all of you, it's a little getting up there in age. So thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for pointing that out to everybody that we're getting up. All right. Anyone else? Public comment now is closed for that last discussion. And we're moving on to Wyoming Responsible Gaming Coalition. I'll have folks come on up.
Good morning, co-chairs Kolb and Lean, members of the committee. My name is John Klontz. I'm the CEO of the Wyoming Lottery Corporation. I have with me Robin Medina. She's my longtime COO and the person who spearheads, at least from our point of view, the coalition. And so we're here today to talk a little bit about our Responsible Gaming, Problem Gambling Coalition, which we actually began working on back in 2013 when I started the lottery. It was one of the first things we began putting together, of course, in alignment with the statute. But we brought much more to it, too, and actually added some elements to it that weren't certainly written in requirement, but from my experience in managing lotteries that I felt were important to bring. So we've been building that over the years. We certainly are partners with the Department of Health, with other gambling entities. We have coalition meetings every so often. We're always careful not to cross the line. We're not treatment providers. We're not addiction specialists. But we use the funds that the law requires us to allocate to problem gambling. The Department of Health can use them at their discretion, and they have trained some of their addiction specialists specifically in problem gaming. Recently, last year, we got certified or verified from the National Council of Problem Gaming, which is a very difficult process and we're pretty proud of. And that involves making sure every employee is trained and has gained some real practical experience in problem gambling. You have to do a bunch of other things, and we had to work on that for quite a while. Robin led that effort, and we're pretty proud of that designation. And we keep in close contact with the National Council because we want to make sure we have a footprint on the national stage and that we're involved in bringing to our program the most modern practices and anything we can do to help, especially as gaming continues to evolve in Wyoming. We want to make sure we're ready to serve people that need it in terms of what we're able and responsible for doing as a lottery. And so Robin, being the person who leads this most of the time and engages in it, I'm going to turn it over to her and let her talk a little bit more about it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So how are you folks? You're a coalition, right? So I think the task force needs some information about what you're doing, obviously.
Sure.
This is the first time you've testified. So who are you? Where does the funding come from?
Yes.
What is your structure? Could you please first explain that?
Yes, Senator Lean and Representative Lean, Senator Kolb. So as the Wyoming Lottery, the statute required us to allocate up to $200,000 to a problem gambling fund, which we do. And we can only use that money for problem gambling. I think, can we pay prizes with that?
Only prizes.
Yeah. But it's allocated for problem gambling. So with that money, we created, or when I first got here, we created a coalition in partnership with the Department of Health, because the statute says that we'll work with the Department of Health. So what we tried to do was just set up quarterly, maybe starting monthly and then evolving into quarterly problem gambling council meetings where we discuss problem gambling, we decide whether or not we need to do tracker studies to assess the level of problem gambling in the state, which we've done some of those. And we create a hotline that people can call if they're having problem gambling issues. Many people who have addiction issues have problem gambling as a secondary or tertiary issue, but we wanted to make sure we established a hotline, that kind of thing. And a lot of advice came to us from people who are specialists in addiction and problem gambling. But we set up this coalition, this council, whatever the appropriate title is, and we partner with the Department of Health. We invite anyone that wants to attend that's interested in problem gambling to the table. Other gaming entities do attend this council meeting when it occurs. And we use the problem gambling funds to train Department of Health folks specifically in gambling addiction rather than just in general addiction or substance abuse. We use it for conference attendance. We use it for training in problem gambling for employees and partners. We also use it for a little bit of money it might have cost to achieve certification, verification, training modules, and that kind of thing. I hope this is answering your question.
Appreciate it.
Robin can give you some more examples of what they do in these meetings.
Who do you report to?
That's a good question. We read there. There is really no, I don't report on this to anyone. I brought more to the coalition that was required in the statute. So what I did with very little direction and a vague mention of this in the statute, I simply brought together what I had learned at another lottery to be a good program. And I put it together the best I could. At the time when I sought out who runs the Problem Gambling Council in Wyoming, who is the problem, I could not find one, except for a gentleman named Ed Atchison at the time who passed on. So I couldn't latch my teeth into, okay, where is and who is. So there was, I mean, maybe there was, but I didn't discover it. So we sort of put this together ourselves and educated people as we went along and added to it beyond what the statute required, just because we thought it was the right thing to do. But quite honestly, didn't have a lot of direction. I don't report this to anyone except to mention it in our quarterly documents that we send out, financials and all of that. I shouldn't say it to anyone, to the board of directors, of course, but beyond the board of directors, there's no one that I am particularly accountable to beyond the coalition itself. I've never been asked that question, so good question.
Well, thank you. The other part, that maybe a simpler way of getting to this is, where do you put your vouchers in for payment? Who, the Department of Health? Or, I mean, how do you acquire monies to do what you're doing, I suppose, is a fiscal question.
Well, co-chairs Kolb and Lean, the board decides on the allocation of that money. So we had to get when the statute says up to $200,000, we weren't sure, does that mean every year we have to put $200,000 in there? What if we have $200,000 in there and we haven't used it? Do we put another $200,000? We were confused. So at the time we got our legal team together, and the interpretation we got of the statute was that we have to maintain up to $200,000, but we don't have to keep piling it on. We just have to have that available if it's needed. To be honest, we sometimes have a tough time spending that money, and we're trying to find unique ways and engage more people that can help us to use it appropriately. So if this verification thing, for example, we decided to do that ourselves. When we went to the Department of Health and offered the training in gambling addiction, we did that together with them. When they found a program they wanted to go to, we paid for it out of those funds. The board regulates and manages those funds the same way they do anything else as a board of directors. So that gets reported out on our financials, it's on our quarterly statements, and I have to account to it in detail to them. But there are no vouchers or anything like that. The law restricts the usage of that money, and we follow that rule of law.
Well, but you're not a government, I mean, you're not a state of Wyoming government organization.
Correct.
Right? I mean, that's.
So I report to the board in terms of my accountability for how those funds are expended.
To who do you report to?
To the board of directors. We have a 9-member governor-appointed board of directors.
But to your board of directors?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What I'm really asking is the flow of money from the state, because there's going to be so much money put towards gambling issues, and you folks are supplying a service that does that. My question is how are you getting the money from the state coffers to your organization, or do you not? Are you private?
Oh, I understand. Senator Kolb, Representative Lean, the money for that program comes from internal operations. We don't get it from the state. It comes from the operations of the lottery. You want to explain that a little bit? Sure.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, so basically what happens is a ticket will expire after 180 days. Once it's expired, I'm sorry.
No, you go on.
So after the 180 days, the money goes into an unclaimed prize fund. That can only be used to pay prizes, and also up to $200,000 a year for problem gambling. So that's how it's funded.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Senator Kolb, Representative Lean, yes, I want to make the point, we don't receive anything from the state, no dollars at all, including money for problem gambling. When someone buys a ticket, they have 180 days to claim the prize. There are a lot of very low-level prizes, $1, $2, whatever. Many people don't take the time or the effort to claim that prize. If 180 days passes and that prize isn't claimed, it goes into an unclaimed prize account. Out of that account is where money is taken and allocated towards this
problem gambling fund, and that money can only be used for problem gambling or paying prizes, not the money allocated to problem gambling. So I misspoke. Out of the unclaimed prize account. So that's money that comes from prizes that are not claimed within that 180-day period, but there is nothing we get from the state.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the clarification. Did you
want to say
anything?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman and Madam Chair, one of the things that might be a question too is that how the money gets to the Department of Health. So as a coalition, we meet and we decide where the monies are going to go. So it doesn't get transferred to the Department of Health, we pay for it. So for example, training. If someone from the Gaming Commission wants to attend training, we work with them and we'll pay for that training. We offer certifications for treatment providers throughout the state if they want to take if they want to go through the certification, we'll pay for the certification. So the funds just come from us and we pay for it. So we're looking at doing a study launching in July. We'll work with the firm and we will pay for it. But all of the money is determined where it would go by the coalition collaboratively. We don't just say, we're gonna do this, or the Gaming Commission doesn't. We work together to decide where the funds will go.
Thank you for that explanation. Co-chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both for coming today.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
responsible for getting you on my agenda, so I appreciate that you're coming and that we're getting this sorted out. I'm mostly curious about how you work with the Gaming Commission and where your funding comes from, and that funding portion's been established. So who's on your coalition, and how do you determine who those people are, and how do you work with the Gaming Commission together?
Okay, Madam Chair. So right now, we have a very diverse membership. We do have two folks from the Department of Health, Danny Sullivan and Ben Kiefer. I pretend I can read, but I can't without my glasses. We have Scott Hayes, who's from the Fremont Counseling Service, and he's been with us since the beginning of the coalition. We have Adelaide Wilson, who is the director of the Wyoming Council on Problem Gambling. We have Jenny Wildcat with the Wind River Hotel and Casino. We have Sarah Beth Lyons from the Wyoming Gaming Commission, and then myself and our marketing manager is part of it as membership. We've actually reached out to some of these folks to invite them to be part of the coalition. Adelaide, who's with the Wyoming Council on Problem Gambling, has just joined, and it was us going to her open house in Buffalo, and we feel like it was a really good fit. Her expertise on the treatment side was a great fit. We're consumer products, so we can't treat folks. And John always reminds us, we're not treatment providers. We can't determine that side of it. The Gaming Commission represents the other sports entities, the HHRs, the sports betting, and Sarah Beth Lyons, she's here, and I just want to say kudos to her. She's really great and very proactive and engaged. So it's very diverse. We have folks that will call us and ask if they can be a part of it, if they can attend a meeting. But a lot of it's being proactive and making sure that we're filling positions from different industries. So it's not just the lottery, it's not just the Gaming Commission. We do need those experts in the treatment side. So together, we just work together, bring our expertise and make the decisions on where our focus will be and then where the funding will go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that information. My next question has to do with WASCOP, or Wyoming Association of Sheriff and Chief of Police. Do they have any interaction with you based on any call escalations or deterioration in sites from the Gaming Commission permittings?
Chairman Lean and Kolb, I'll let Robin expand a little bit, but not to my knowledge. And I do want to say that this is not something we're holding on to or that we necessarily feel should be within our area of responsibility. Everything we've done are things we've learned or we've built over time out of a sense of responsibility. I will always want to contribute to the responsible gaming, be a part of it, but I'm not advocating that it is appropriate for it to stay where it's at. It has grown to where it is, but we're certainly not experts. a lot of the things that go on within a professional coalition, I'm not sure that we've done those things. We've just tried to do our best in the absence of a lot of direction. So I don't think we've engaged with those folks. I've met with several chief of police over the years informally as I've traveled across the state, but I don't know that they come to the meetings or anything like that. And I am always warning my people, we're not treatment experts. We're not gambling addiction specialists. So don't cross that line. And when we're in these council meetings, we don't want to direct anything. We're just there to make sure the council holds together. We got it started and we want to provide the money, but we don't want to direct anything because we are far from experts in that area. It just sort of fell on us as we grew the program, and we grew it because we felt we needed to do something. There's been some mention of maybe it belongs somewhere else, probably, and that would be great. Because, again, our focus is on generating revenue and selling products and doing it responsibly. And one of the things we've done, too, is hook into the child support system with Child and Family Services, and we can collect back child support. So any of these ancillary things we can do, whether it's child support, responsible gambling, we want to do all of that. But we're certainly not experts in running a problem gambling council.
A lot to take in there. I am still a little unclear about this whole, how this came about. And, it sounds like money's coming off the lottery tickets.
Yes, sir.
Who decided they're going to skim the money, and I'll just use that word, skim the money, off of the unclaimed winnings, and then they decided to divert to you, and we've got your program, and apparently that other money that's going to the Department of Health. And, it looks like we're, maybe not singing off the same sheet of music. And so I'm not taking away from what you do. I realize you're doing what you believe is correct to help the public. I get that. I'm just looking at it as basically oversight, going, what are you doing? I mean, I don't know enough about it really to say more than that, but I am certainly very confused about what we're doing here, because it doesn't seem to be clear to me. I mean, you on one hand, you want to offload it. On the next hand, you're saying you're doing it and, got thrown in your lap. I mean, I appreciate your honesty, right? But just trying to figure out, like a traffic cop, which way we're going here. And it sounds like there's, how it is with government, right?
Yes.
It blows off into these like coalitions or whatever they are. They pull money out to do whatever they're doing. The public is suspicious of this. The public thinks people are, basically feathering their own nest, for lack of better. And I'm not saying you're doing that, but the public perception is, as soon as you have these coalitions, quote unquote, of the people trying to do these things, that they're taking money from lottery ticket sales, essentially winnings, and then diverting it into this program. And I think that brings up all these questions that, well, what are we doing? So I certainly would like to know more about this, because I don't know enough right now to get my arms around it. And it's always hard when you come into something basically cold and trying to understand what you've been doing for a long time. And I'm not taking away, once again, what you're doing. I'm just saying this task force needs to understand the different facets of what we're trying to do with gambling addictions and what we're doing to address that and the money we're spending to do that. So we've got, lottery tickets that are funding gambling issues with people that are in other forms of gambling, right? And it's like, well, is that really appropriate? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a nebulous question, but is that really the right thing to do with that money? And I know I'm saying this rhetorically, but I appreciate you coming in. Is there something else you'd like to add to this, or maybe some clarity? Oh, well, first, if you get anything else you want to add, then.
Yes, sir. Well, Senator Cole, Representative Lee, the part about taking the money from unclaimed tickets, that's in statute. So we're following the statute as it was interpreted to us. So that's all we've ever done. The part about establishing a coalition and getting people to the table was just something we felt, we were tasked with. You got to have some kind of problem gambling outreach. But frankly, yes, I don't know if it's the best approach or not. We tried to do the best we could in an area where we're not experts. But the part about how we handle the money is just how the statute tells us to do it. That's all I'll say about that.
You know, the statute, but the statute, I understand you didn't write the law. Believe me, some of the people writing the law, they don't understand what it means at the end either.
We had to go through a lot of, legal discussion to try and interpret it somehow.
So it just smacks me strange that we're taking money by statute, giving it to a coalition, and it's supposedly by statute that they get this money. Well, that just seems odd.
Well, Senator Kolb, if they want something, we pay for it. If the coalition decides, okay, we all agree that these 3 counselors of the Department of Health should go to the University of whatever to take a gambling class, and they all want that, then we pay for it out of those funds. We don't just turn over the $200,000 to them. So it's kind of strange.
Well, I appreciate the conversation, and I am, in all honesty, to the members of this task force, I'm still learning also.
Yes, sir.
Especially about this. Co-Chair Lynn knows more about it than I do, so I look forward to her follow-up question.
I'm sorry, I've been saying Lean, it's Lynn. My apologies to you. Lean. Is it Lean? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, or Madam Chairman, I can direct you to the statutes if you're interested in those numbers. They're also provided to you by the Wyoming County Commissioners Association.
Yeah, if you could forward that to everybody in the task force.
And I think they're on your handout provided by the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. 924-104 and 917-119.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Mr. Chairman, thank you for coming today. And I have questions about what's going on and where we're at, and that's why I have you here. So thank you for coming.
Yes, of course.
My follow-up question would be public calls. Do you have any kind of statistics on what you're receiving in from the coalition? And I know that there's a self-diverting program that you can just put yourself on a list that takes you away from the ability to be able to gamble in Wyoming. Do you have any of those numbers, or should I call up Ms. Sarah Beth Lyon? Should she join you? Would that be helpful?
Madam Chair, yeah, that would be helpful. We do get statistics on hotline calls through the National Council, so we can see when there are trends that are going up or going down. So we do have that information, and we'll try to review those each quarter when we meet as a coalition, just so because it's not just lottery, it's all gaming that it's capturing these calls from. So we do evaluate that, and then if, the numbers are going up, we have deeper conversations about it. But Sarah Beth, I don't know if you have more to add.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Beth Lyon. I'm the Public Information Officer and Responsible Gaming Liaison with the Gaming Commission. Thank you for having me. Self-exclusion, I'll address that first. There is, with online sports wagering companies, you can self-exclude from each individual regulator or operator. They are also the Responsible Online Gaming Association. They are making a clearinghouse right now where you can self-exclude from all of them, all at the same time. In Wyoming, you can go to our website, and on there is a self-exclusion. You can fill it out online. And self-exclusion is an extra layer of accountability for folks who saying that I have a problem and I need some help. I need some additional reinforcement, right? So currently there are 20 people from Wyoming that have said, on our list, that have said they want to self-exclude. That information is then cataloged by me and then securely distributed to whoever they say they want to self-exclude from. It may be online sports wagering, it may be pari-mutuel wagering, it may be skill-based amusement games. That information then I send to those operators, vendors, so that they have that information knowing that these people want to be self-excluded. And that's the process that we have right now. They were just talking about sending people to training. I went to training last week. I was with the North American Gaming Regulators Association and received some excellent training and also connections with other states that are doing some very profound things with responsible gaming and things like that. So hopefully that will be even more robust as we continue throughout this process. There is one distinction I would really like to make for you to understand, that there is responsible gaming and there is problem gambling, and they are two very separate things. You are looking at apples and oranges. Responsible gaming is for everyone. Educating people about responsible gaming, about what gaming looks like, how to do it responsibly, how to notice maybe if one of your friends is having a problem. Responsible gaming is for everyone. Problem gambling is where you look at the treatment, where you're looking at people who have a problem. And that is a very much smaller group of people. And so they're two very different things. They are related, but they're two separate things.
Let's give her the money.
Yeah, well, I keep saying.
There's a follow-up. There's a question.
Go ahead.
Senator McEwen?
Yeah, I'm curious. How does someone self-exclude themselves from a skills game? Is there somebody who follows them around and makes sure they don't go play?
That is a $1 million question right there. That is something that we can do better. And some of the resources and connections at the training that I made, I have ideas. I have connections of people that have been doing things. It is not perfect, and there's room to grow.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up?
Follow-up.
We could always install AI chips in them. If they touch the machine, it zaps them.
I mean, that is something. They, on every skill-based amusement game, one of the requirements that they have is there's a QR code on every skill game, and that is a requirement. If they don't have that sticker, they will get shut down or they'll be told they need to get it, but it is a QR code that sends them to our website, to our responsible gaming, where there is information about self-exclusion, there's information about problem gambling and responsible gambling so that they can see those different things. There is also 1-800-GAMBLER is the National Council on Problem Gambling. That is available to everyone across the country, and that is something that is a consistent messaging. So anywhere you go, if you go to Vegas, if you go to Atlantic City, if you go to a skill game place in Nebraska, you're going to see 1-800-GAMBLER through the National Council on Problem Gambling. They're open 24/7. You can call, you can text, and you can also chat online for someone who might be saying, I'm having trouble sticking to my budget. Can someone help me here? And they can help you through that process, direct you to people in your area that can help you with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I have a follow-up to that. How do you measure your success?
Working on it. Measuring success in the problem gambling area and responsible gaming looks a little bit different. I've been in this position for 2 years now, and I'm not sure that I do it very well yet. But I have been looking at other outside resources, working with the coalition. I think the study that Robin was talking about that we're starting in July with the coalition will be a helpful indicator of where we are and where we need to go.
We have a question. Senator Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what's the balance in the unclaimed prize money account? I'm just looking at $200,000 annually is set aside. Is there additional monies in there that if we wanted to raise that, because it says no more than 200,000 in the statute, is there available funds in that account if we wanted to use that?
In the unclaimed prize account, there's about $800,000 in there. I'm sorry, co-chairs and Senator. And, sometimes we get frustrated at, we wish we could do more with that money, but there's restrictions on it. So this is sometimes when I see that money go up there, I'll tell Robin, find some way to make sure we're using this, in terms of problem gambling. And she's right, I probably mislabeled problem gambling, responsible gaming. We spend a lot of time, or at least my direction is on gambling education. We don't know anything about addiction treatment, and we rely on them a lot for that. But we do try to be creative, especially when that fund starts to go up, because I want to use that money, not waste it, but use it within the context of what the law says. But it can get up there, and right now it's about 800. So if the legislature were to say, we want you to make that 300 or something like that, that's certainly, we're able to do that, of course.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. So, I think we could craft the language where it's not mandatory, but it would give you some discretion so that on years, if you had additional funds or saw a need that you needed additional flexibility, maybe we could change that. It'd be a simple fix, I think.
Co-chairs and Senator Crago, that we've often dreamed about that happening, and we've had some pretty stellar audits. Our audits are really tough, and the board accounts for every dollar, so we're pretty confident in how we're managing that. But having flexibility to use it more diversely would be welcome, because we want to do everything we can in terms of responsible gaming or whatever the laws say the money should be used for. But our hands are tied in how we can use it. But there's certainly more money there available if we needed to make it, earn it, or get it back from these unclaimed tickets, and then let the experts use it. We'd love to do that. Or even send it wherever, whoever would get it and know how to use it appropriately. We don't care about controlling it at all.
Well, need to have input from you folks on what the sideboards are that you'd like to have changed.
Yes, sir.
Like, what's constraining you to do something you can't do now? I mean, what in the language needs to be modified to let you do what you think you need to do? And then certainly this task force needs to hear about that.
Yes, sir.
And make a decision if that's good or bad. I can tell you what scares the bejesus out of me is more people in government telling me they're gonna, first off, they scare me when you not using the money, because you will figure a way to use it and burn it. And then, and I'm not saying you're doing that now, but in government, generally speaking, because you guys are apparently, doing responsible things as a coalition. Not all coalitions are like that, and nor will it always be like that. It just depends on leadership, right? Your leadership is such that it looks stable. But we have to craft legislation that's going to be durable over the long term, and not just, let things go whichever way, the director of said coalition would like it to. So
yes, sir.
I think the task force needs information from you on what you would like to do, really simply put, to free up the money, and what would you use that money for, what purposes, and to explain, why you need it. That would be great.
Yes, sir, we will do that.
And I have a follow-up question by
Let's make sure that's a priority.
co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if this is for you or for the Department of Health. On this handout here, I'm noticing that the health departments have different values going to different counties. Can you explain to me something like Park County, where they have no HHR machines, is getting 21,000, but then something like Natrona, who has many HHR machines, has 54,000?
Madam Chairman, that handout was not provided by the coalition. It was provided by the Wyoming County Commissioners Association, so that's why he's coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Also address.
well.
Whoever can answer it, I welcome you to the table.
Mr. Ryman, could you answer that question and shed some light? So,
I can answer.
well, I thought
Mr.
you were
Ryman.
handed
Yep.
off to Jeremiah because he
Either
didn't
way.
answer. Okay, well, we'll hand off to Jeremiah. Sarah, stand by.
I will.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. I do have some broader testimony that I can get to here in a second. In relationship to that money, that comes from online sports wagering, and I'll reference that statute here shortly. So it's not specific to skill games, HHR. It's online sports wagering, which generates that revenue, which then goes to all 23 counties because all of them have online sports wagering occurring in their jurisdictions.
Did you want to add to that, Sarah?
You bet. Thank you, co-chairs. In an earlier question, you asked about the rollover of that $300,000. And working with the Department of Health on that, what happens is counties can either accept or decline that money. And then if they decline that money, it stays in that pool. It doesn't go anywhere else. It is rolled over until the next year, so that then whatever is left from the previous year plus the additional $300,000 from the next year is then distributed.
Thank you for that clarification. Jeremiah, do you want to add anything else to that?
Mr. Chairman, if you would like, I'd be happy to give all of my testimony, which will hit on a lot of what you're discussing here and our perspectives
We're
on
running up
this.
against the lunch break, and I think we're going to have to make a decision. We're probably going to recess for lunch until 1:30. As long as the participants that want to be, they want to stay, unless someone has time constraints, please state that you have to be somewhere else for another appointment. That would be but continue on.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think I can be quick. I don't think this needs to be drawn out. I brought this issue up a number of times over the years, so I really appreciate that this conversation is happening before this group. In fact, I presented on this issue to the travel committee just on Friday, and they're deferring to either you or to the Capital Finance Committee in relationship to this issue. I did provide you with two documents. One is a 2-pager with our heading at the top of it. The second is the document that you referenced in terms of the Department of Health. I thought it was important to, and if anybody wants to see these documents, go to the Joint Travel Committee's website. They're all loaded there. It's important to note a few things about this broader system, and I want to compliment all of the people that have spoken and others that are in the room. We're all trying to do our part in this space, but I will tell you it's disjointed, and that's part of my effort, is to try and clean this up and do better by our citizens. As the first page of the document with our heading on it has, I've listed the Gaming Commission rules relative to this space, as well as statutes. As you can see, there are currently 2 of the 4 elements of this gaming system that we're talking about today that do not contribute via their revenues towards problematic gaming. So there is no funding from HHR or skill-based amusement games that goes to problematic or responsible gaming. Now, that's not to say that the department or the Gaming Commission doesn't do that internally, and I'm very grateful for the resource that Sarah Beth is to counties in this space. They're taking that from their operational revenues, but there is nothing that's dedicated from the revenues of those 2 things to this issue. I've provided the statute that is there relative to online sports wagering. That is what funds the Department of Health monies that you see there. What I think is important to note about the Department of Health is that they have no problem gaming or any gaming sort of division within their agency. They're helping the coalition largely because if you go into the statute, it says that they're supposed to work with the Wyoming Lottery. They are entirely a pass-through agency for this funding, and I think they would tell you that they'd love to get out of that business. They would perhaps love that the Gaming Commission just distributes the money to the counties. It's kind of an odd situation. Sarah Beth was very good to point out to you that if you totaled up the amounts that are on the document that I gave you today, it would amount to over $400,000. That's because year over year, there are counties that decline the funding that's allocated for them. Those, at least in '24, were Campbell, Converse, Goshen, Lincoln Park, and Uinta counties. They all declined their money, so that went back into the pool and ultimately resulted in a larger pool that's now available to them this year. The county commissioners will have to make a decision on whether they're going to accept that funding. But if you look at the counties there, Niobrara County, $1,700 is what would be allocated to them. Hot Springs, $3,200. So if you look at the statutory framework as well, it's for the purposes of funding county health programs to prevent and treat problematic gaming behavior. Some counties think that's pretty broad. Some of them think it's too constraining. If you only have $1,700, you're trying to figure out what to do. Now, we've done some things internally in the association to try and pair counties together so the buying power or the resources are bigger, but for some, it's still not enough incentive for them to get in. Sarah Beth has done a great job of putting together a resource that says, here are all the things that you might consider putting this money to use for, and she'll certainly grow that over time. But the statutory framework isn't working for a number of counties as it relates to that particular pot of money. If you turn over to the lottery, you've talked about that a lot today, the $200,000. And I've had conversations with Director Klontz and Mr. Laramundi, the governor's office, and others. We all think we could do better if this was restructured. So frankly, what I recommended to the TRW committee is look at whether we shouldn't consolidate the funding. Number two, whether we shouldn't capture revenue from all of the gaming activities that should be dedicated to this particular activity. Determine who is ultimately going to administer that. I'm not saying that counties are best, but maybe we are, and maybe that should be directed to the local level. And then I think it would be important across all of these to clarify or expand what the uses of funding can be. Some of the counties question why they can't use this funding for their mental health and substance abuse programs. Because what we're talking about ultimately is an addictive behavior, and shouldn't they be able to use it to help people directly through those programs that they've had long-standing for some time. So, Mr. Chairman, again, I appreciate your consideration of this issue. We'll be here to partner with you, but we do think it needs to be taken on.
We got a question, Co-Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Ryman. My question's actually not for you, but I have some for you, but it'll be after lunch. My question is for the folks that came from the Gambling Commission. You mentioned a study that you're putting out in July. Could you walk us through a little bit of what you're hoping to gain from that study?
Madam Chair, so we did the first study as a coalition in 2016, and then we did another study in 2022. When we received both of those studies and the analysis and insights, there was very little indication that there was a big problem here in Wyoming. So like what Sarah Beth said, you've got problem gambling, scary, and then you have responsible gambling. So from the first study, we actually created an advertising campaign, and it was Too Much Good is Bad. You may have seen it. It was statewide, billboards, radio, it was everywhere. And then we created the coalition formally, a logo, objectives, mission, that type of thing. But that was early on. So we do know after 2022, things have probably changed. So we thought it was important to get another study out there. So we're working with WISAC. They are a department of the University of Wyoming. We wanted to bring in a firm that knows Wyoming demographics. Before, when we conducted the study before, it was a firm that was very knowledgeable in lottery, but not gaming. But there were only horse racing and lottery at the time. But we do believe that we need to bring in a Wyoming resource so that we really can drill down and get some great insights. Don't have the methodology nailed out yet. We will start jumping into that in July. It's a 12-week study. We will look at the studies we've done before as a benchmark so we can see if there are any trends, but then we'll pull in a lot of the coalition members, the treatment providers, and those types of people, use the National Council as a resource to review the study that we're doing. We just want to make sure when we get this study out there that it is bringing in the information that will help the Gaming Commission and the lottery and all of the gaming entities. So.
Co-chairs, again, you heard Robin mention logos, branding, marketing, sales. That's what we're good at. That's what we do. But these surveys were just, I can't even remember if it was me or someone else or a combination, but when we did the first one, it was, we have to do something. We have to use these funds and let's see what the problem looks like. And time passes and gaming has changed, so let's do another one. But again, we're not experts at any of that. We turn it over to the people that we think are experts and hope that it does some good. And we want to spend the money to pay the people who conduct the tracker studies. But the results, again, we're not experts at how to interpret that and then create an action plan around it. We need to rely on people who are professionals in that area. But we're real good at, putting the logo together and putting the advertisements out and responsible gaming posters and all that stuff.
Okay, well, hold on a second. This is gonna drag on, right? I mean, this is a big conversation that needs a lot of time. So in the interest of time and our schedule, I'm gonna recess until 1:30 after lunch, and then please, if everybody can come back, and we'll continue this conversation and learn more about it. So thank you. So we'll recess till 1:30. I was afraid this was gonna happen. Next time, tell me about this, because I had no idea.